Hello and welcome to Warhammer 40K podcast. I'm your host this time. My name's Trevor. Joining me, we got the great and mighty Puma Lord. Welcome, Christian.
Hey, not used to recording on this night, but we'll see how this goes.
Yeah, and you don't have your sweet boy James there rubbing your knee, telling you what words to say. Laugh at my joke here.
Yeah, it's prompting me the whole way through.
Prompts, yeah. We also got Gerald, the man of many voices. Welcome.
Well, hello. I am currently a tech priest in training.
Yeah, man. Both of you guys don't want to join me on the live stream and show your faces, so it's just me looking awkwardly at the screen. But hey, good thing this is a podcast, I suppose. Speaking of podcast stuff, we'll just do some housekeeping before we get into the cool episode we got going today. It's episode 116, Criminal Organizations and Gangs. And being down in Panama has taught me a lot of these two types of situations. I might even start my own at one point, but we can all dream together later about that. Housekeeping, Discord stuff. Discord's popping. We got a bunch of cool events and stuff. There's Sunday night movie nights. We got the event going on right now called Gangs vs. Arbites Warfare, where basically you can write, 1,500 words for either a criminal gang or an Adeptus Arbites, and then we're going to battle them off, much like we did with the Warlords of Old Terra stuff. I think there's already probably like 10 people kind of submitted lore. Pretty close to it, eh, Gerald?
I know I've pinned like maybe 6 or 7 different documents to the channel, so yeah, at least.
Yeah. My guy, I feel like, is pretty cool. I wrote in Arbites. This time I'm going to cheat to win, I think, just so I can read it off and share what I did. If you have ultimate power and you're the authority on the planet as that Arbites, it's hard to argue. So that's kind of the goal.
Yeah, corruption right off the top, eh?
Yeah, no, exactly. I can be bought. And we're live streaming. Gerald, tell us about the live stream.
So if you too want to join in on the live stream, just join the Patreon. All you got to do is throw us like what, $1, $2, and then you get a nice little access link, and there's a chat room that you can talk to us during the show. And then, of course, as usual, if you already know, we do accept call-in guests near the end of the episode, and so just let one of us know if you're interested, and we will shoot you that lovely little link.
Yeah, the call-ins are super cool. And here's the thought about call-ins. People ask me all the time, how do I get on Warhammer? How do I get on an episode? How do I get on a main episode? Here's kind of the setup of how you make that happen. First of all, you got to call in. You got to be a call-in guest. Get us to know the sound of your voice. Some people like Nick or Grimaldus, they've been calling in, and I get to be friends with them. So that's kind of step 2. Become my friend or buy me off, either one. And then step 3 is kind of join me on like a listener lore. Let's build some rapport together. It's cool being online because I'm able to get a bunch of new voices and opinions on the show. So definitely trying to get people on that want to be on now that we have that kind of ability. As long as your sound is good and your internet's good, definitely would love to have you guys on. So that's kind of the order of events, be a call-in guest, then maybe come on listener lore, then maybe seduce me into friendship, and before you know it, you'll be on Warhammer Main.
Here's a pro tip. That was how I got my start, so if I can make it, so can you.
Exactly.
I just met Mark on a dating app. I don't know.
Plenty of fish. Yes, sir.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, as Mark was saying, if you want to pay him off too, as the local Arbites, join the Patreon. So a couple bucks his way. Join the Imperial Tithe and help us keep the show going. There's also ad-free versions too on the Patreon as well. So if you don't like ads, you want to help support the show yourself, please consider joining Patreon. Lots of advantages to joining.
Yeah, I just spent the last week uploading every episode we have in both pretty much video, if we had the video, but audio format for sure, onto the Patreon. And for $2.50, you'll never have to listen to an ad again. $2.50 a month. It's a hell of a deal. And you'll never listen to bullshit ads again. You probably just got interrupted by an ad right there.
And then again, right there.
And right there, it's fucked. So $2.50, you'll never have to listen to an ad again. Join the Patreon. It really helps the show. Man, I know how big our audience is, and I know some of you are lacking. But hey, maybe with Trump in office, man, our wallets would be flush with cash again. Drill, baby, drill. Let's get this shit going. Criminal organizations and gangs. That's the segue from Donald Trump.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was that was not. Go for it.
Oh man. Yeah, today's episode is about criminal organizations and gangs. And man, going through this, it was very interesting to do. I tried to not focus specifically on any one gang or organization because they can vary, just like any imperial organization just has a drastic variance in what they're about. So we're going to kind of lay out some things, and at the end we got some cool questions you could ask yourself on how to make a gang yourself, both in real life or on tabletop. It should be a lot of fun. So here we go. Let's get into it. In the shadowed recesses of the Imperium of Man, beyond the gaze of the Emperor's statuesque shrines and the iron walls of the Adeptus Arbites, lies an empire within an empire. This hidden world thrives on ambition, profit, and the cutthroat exchange of blood and secrets. A living beast of chaos and calculation. From the festering depths of the underhive to the ranks of the noble houses corrupted by greed, criminal organizations spin a web that rivals the Imperium bureaucracy in complexity, fueled by the desperation and driven by the promise of power. Here, every gang, cartel, and syndicate has carved out its own twisted version of order, a brutal hierarchy where ruthless ambition is the only law. Leaders are often as influential as any planetary governor and command vast networks of enforcers and assassins. Men and women as loyal as they are deadly. Deals brokered in dim lit chambers shift the balance of control and power. Their reach extends to the lowest hive dwellers who barter their lives for scraps of status, to the high-ranking officials who gamble imperial resources in the bloodstained games of profit.
Hold on a second. Hold on. Are you sure we're talking about Imperium hive criminal organizations? Because this sounds a lot like Kamara. Kamara Part 2?
Yeah. In the twisted halls of the criminal organization, there is only origami. To these syndicates, the Imperium is more than just an oppressive force to be avoided. It is a machine of opportunity, one whose endless bureaucracy provides both a mask and a market. Smuggling routes trace the very arteries of the galaxy, carrying contraband weapons, forbidden technology, and xenos artifacts that fetch fortunes in hidden auctions. Corrupt members of the Adeptus Arbites turn a blind eye in exchange for credits and rare treasures, while whispers hint at the inquisitors who occasionally employ gangs to their dirtiest work, beyond even the shadow of imperial scrutiny. Operating within this empire of crime is both a calculated art and brutal science. Gangs fight for territory like predators over carcasses, enforcing their rule with the ferocity of the Emperor's own soldiers. They are marked by their chosen symbols. Some wear the scars of vicious initiation rituals. Others don specialized war gear, fetched from the imperial caches and modified for their purposes. Their arsenal is eclectic and deadly, ranging from salvaged lasguns to custom auto guns. Gold-plated auto guns. Combat drugs and improvised explosives that fill the air with acid, smoke, and the promise of death. Yeah, like, there can really be anything, man. Any type of gang you can think of, any type of contraband. Are they smuggling Tau waifu across the galaxy? Possibly, man. And I'm sure there's a market for that. I'm sure it's also illegal.
There is a huge market for that. We knew that from Earth.
Yeah, we got Ursat's in the chat right now, and he's from Japan, so he probably is already on that waifu Tau train.
I wonder what the market is called, because I wonder if black market is just strictly to terror, you know?
Uh-huh. Yeah, and the fish market is already taken. So, oh man. Operating within this empire of crime is both a calculated art and brutal science. Gangs fight for territory. Oh, I read that one. Beneath the thriving hives.
How dare you, Mark?
Oh my. Yeah. Beneath the thriving criminal underworld, however, lies an undercurrent of ambition that cannot be sated. For these organizations, survival is not enough. They seek dominance, always pushing the boundaries of power, always seeking to control one more district, one more line of imperial trade, one more line of coke. The very nature of their existence is a testament to the vast unseen decay within the Imperium, a reflection of humanity's struggle against itself, festering in the underbelly of worlds. This empire within the empire holds no allegiance, but to itself, ready to serve, betray, or devour the Imperium it feeds upon.
Yeah, it's really cool. Like, the Imperium's often like this big, like, monolith, but there's so many little cracks, and that's like in those cracks is where people are kind of carving out their own like ambitions and power, and like, you know, subverting the law or the bureaucracy. And these big titanic machines always develop those like little crevices where people can start carving out their own, you know, fortunes or ambitions. And oftentimes, like, if you're downtrodden and you don't have a lot going for you in the Imperium, it's like, okay, like, you could make a little money. Life isn't totally miserable if you can start trading in something that makes your life a little better, right? So
yeah,
there's definitely
and like it's totally gonna be worth the risk too. Like, a lot of these criminals come from just, you know, the underdreads of society with no upward mobility, so you're kind of almost forced to each court starch or become a ganger.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
But also,
it takes it back to our Hive City discussion, where, I mean, you got to have that ambition, not just for the nobles up in the spires, but I mean, if you want any kind of mobility down below, you got to have that ambition.
Yeah, man, it takes an effort to get a group of people together to do something. You know, you got to have an ambitious leader. He's got to be sending out those meetings. Meet on the corner of 69th and 8th Spire. We're going to start smuggling some shit. And then, you know, you send out 10 invites and only one person shows up. But it's your gang. It's your homie. It's fine.
at least he showed up. That's what counts.
He showed up. And he even brought half of a las gun. So, perfect.
I thought you were bringing the other half.
We're starting ourselves a revolution. Want to come? I guess we didn't put on applause. It's a rock, paper, scissors joke for you.
Just a little rock, paper, scissors joke for you. Oh, man.
Well, I guess while we're talking about forming crime gangs and revolutions, let's talk about their formation and development. In the grimdark expanse of the 41st millennium, every hive world, every forsaken colony, every forgotten station within the Imperium is fertile ground for the formation of criminal syndicates and gangs. The vast underhives teem with wretched souls, generations who know only poverty, violence, and the taste of decay. They are born into shadows and filth, forced to fight for scraps or perish. Here, ambition is both a weapon and a curse, fueling the rise of organizations that claw their way to dominance from nothing but the will to survive. Again, with the ambition, it's just so inherent. Zinch is having a field day with this. It begins small. A crew of desperate souls gathered around a cunning leader, drawn to whispered promises of food, safety, and power. This leader is rarely the strongest, but always the sharpest, someone who sees opportunity in chaos, able to command loyalty with the promise of a life free from the whims of the powerful above. Their following grows quickly, fed by desperation and united by need, becoming a force with its own laws, its own brutal sense of order. But in the Imperium, survival demands more than brute force. These gangs adapt, shaping themselves to the needs and dangers of their environment. In the slums of the hive cities, they begin with petty crimes, extortion, theft, and smuggling. But the fires of ambition never stop burning. Every street controlled, every market taxed, every rival crushed is another step in their rise. Blood marks their progress, and for those who wish to climb higher, the line between predator and prey blurs. They absorb smaller gangs, swallowing them in a ruthless quest for power, transforming from neighborhood scourges into organized syndicates.
You're muted, Mark.
Yeah, Mark, you're muted.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, I kind
Do
of
you
like
ranting, but see you ranting in the picture, spittle hitting the screen.
That's nice. Yeah, I love the shifting territories of the gangs and how, like, there's like, I can just imagine the hive city and how you would even keep track of whose territory is who in a place of 1 trillion people, and that's just constantly shifting and changing. And they have these like hard lines where it's like, this is where the gangs kind of stop, because if you go much more, then you're going to enter like the upper hives, and then you might get the arbites called on you, or just, it's this kind of knowing where you can make the most of your men or your gangers and put in places and just try to keep taking and hustling places.
I mean, that, or you can really learn how to be buddy-buddy with some of the very corrupt nobles in the spires.
Yeah. I loved some of the ideas we had on our hive episode idea of like, the one that's coming to me is that guy who controls the elevators and stuff of resources between all the spires, and how he would have just such an organization of crime if he really wanted to. He could ship contraband up and down, but also he could tax and tariff or toll people, the goods going between the levels. And, if you're not setting up resources to those upper spires, they're going to get desperate pretty quick and want to make a deal with you. Or if you just keep letting up gangers, like, oops, I don't know how they're getting on this elevator, but here they are up in the upper spires again. Like, yeah, there's just so many little nitty gritty like details in a hive that you could take and try to turn into some type of gang or syndicate.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't even be surprised if there are some spires that might be like a hub for like the really rich and powerful, like think Sopranos, but because obviously those kind of crime lords aren't going to be muddling around in the lower hives where it's all filthy and nasty. They're going to want to be up in the top, the clean areas to show off their ill-gotten goods.
Yeah, it's cool because like in real life, a lot of ports and stuff are where you find like a lot of criminal activity. You'll see like on a lot of detective shows and stuff. That's where they go because that's where stuff is being brought in, and that's like you said, Mark, it's a perfect avenue for like smuggling stuff. Yeah, controlling access routes and controlling resources are the two big ones if you want to monopolize on some kind of criminal activity. This is not advice.
No, it is. It is.
Yeah. For Lorehammer Legal, this is not advice.
So what do you call the underhive different types of crime? We got the underhive crime, that's like your blue collar. You got your white collar crime, which are like your hive lords, like, but there has to be better terms for these. Yeah, tax evasion and stuff as opposed to petty murder for somebody's wallet. Yeah. So I'll come up with something. Don't worry.
Yeah, so for all you participate in the gangers versus arbites, feel free to come up with some nice 40K sounding terms for such esteemed individuals.
Yeah, it's just I look at those Goliath models and they're not even wearing collars, so it's like, what kind of crime are they up to? Muscle bound crime? I don't know.
They do have
crime of not working out is the
like,
biggest offense of all.
They have those dog collars, is what they wear. It's dog collar crime.
Oh god. No, it's got dog. I don't like that.
Oh man. But with how talking about all these different kind of crimes, of course the gangers are subject to changing and evolving, adapting to the times. So these organizations evolve like organic beasts, honing their methods in the crucible of violence. They forge alliances with outcasts and renegades, recruiting enforcers, smugglers, informants, and mercenaries. Each new recruit knows the risks. Survival within a gang is fleeting, and loyalty is rewarded only as long as it serves the leader's ambitions. Traitors and failures are made examples of, their bodies left to rot as warnings to others. With this unyielding discipline, a gang grows into something more than a gang. It becomes a force of nature, an underground empire where every member's life is pledged to the rise of the organization.
I love just like the weird twisted sense of gang loyalty that even like modern gangs have, where it's like, if you snitch, man, you're in a lot of trouble now, man. That's kind of like the dividing line. There's like that honesty amongst thieves or whatever they say.
Yeah, it's kind of wild because one of the, I guess it's not a newer show, Tulsa King kind of deals with that in a way because it's about a former crime boss not crime boss, but works for the mob. He gets out of prison after a 25-year sentence. Never once did he snitch on his gang, but in the 25 years that he's been in prison, his gang thought, nah, there's no way he didn't turn now. So they just kind of write him off like in this day and age, like even that kind of loyalty is not a thing anymore.
Yeah. Well, that loyalty is like hard to buy. You kind of mentioned Cormorant earlier, and like we know in Cormorant, there's not a single loyal person there that you can actually entrust, except for like one organization of the Incubi, which are like bodyguards, and their word is like going to happen. They will never betray you.
It's the only thing they got going for them. They trade on their loyalty. That's why
that's a great way to say it.
Yeah.
As long as they get paid.
Yeah.
I like all your Gerald, all your pop culture references here. Let's go through every criminal TV show.
This is what Mark pays me for. The voices and all the pop culture references.
You guys hear the voices from Gerald too at night, right? It's not just me.
It's just you.
Hey, I heard y'all's discussion about my orc voice, so it behooves you to know that I do.
That was fucked. Never do that again.
I would. I can't do it with a straight face now. Okay. All right. Focus. Beyond the immediate fight for survival, these gangs reach deeper into the heart of Imperial society. They establish links with corrupt officials, trading favors for protection. Black market trades become the backbone of their wealth, and as their coffers grow, so does their influence. Eventually, the gang reaches a point where they aren't merely surviving, they're expanding, mutating into an organization with a network that stretches far beyond the streets. Syndicates rise with the tentacles that touch every part of life in the lower reaches, providing forbidden pleasures, dangerous contraband, and a semblance of order for those willing to pay. These criminal empires often become a perverse mirror of the Imperium itself.
That's the longest quiet I've ever had, ever. I don't even want to edit that one out. It was so long.
I thought you were trying to say something, so I gave you a moment.
Yeah. I was just agreeing with you in a fervent passion when we're talking about gangs. I'm just jotting down notes and just enjoying it.
Okay. They enforce their rules of absolute authority, demanding unwavering loyalty. Disobedience is met with swift retribution, a brutal reminder of who holds power. Their leaders operate from fortified strongholds, emergent only when their authority is questioned or when a message must be sent to enemies foolish enough to stand in their way. So here's another pop culture reference for y'all. This also kind of reminds me a lot of Mayor of Kingstown. I think it's on Amazon Prime. Yeah, on Amazon Prime. So basically, it's Jeremy Renner,
about?
Hawkeye, if you know. So he is the quote unquote mayor of Kingstown, aka he is like the intermediary between all the major criminal organizations in his little city and then between their representatives in the prison population, because that one city has like 7 prisons. And so he's trying to keep the balance of power so things don't go crazy. And well, shit hits the fan big time. So
yeah, that's probably like the worst place to live, like just Prisonlandia. Just instead of surrounded by farmers' fields, you're just surrounded by fucking prisons.
Jail cells. As far as the eye can see.
Jail cells.
I mean,
beautiful.
I mean, the opening line in the show is like, this city thrives on the city's main import is prison. So
next episode is penal calls.
Oh boy. As these syndicates grow, they develop their own cultures, their own identities forged in blood and iron. The rituals of The rituals of initiation and loyalty become sacred. Gang colors, tattoos, and symbols mark members as part of something greater. The weak are discarded, the ambitious rise. The darkest irony of their existence is that these organizations often last far longer than the lives of their members. Legacies of crime passed down like family names. Each generation is as willing as the last to spill blood for control over a world that, in truth, will never belong to any of them.
I kind of like that. That's
I
very
just
cool thing.
picture. Yeah, I just picture like 40K taking like the, Crips and blood and dialing them to 11, and now their uniforms are even more bedazzled. They're wearing even more gold. Like everything's just amped up and over the top.
Yeah.
The tattoos are like glow in the dark and stuff, or just whatever you can think of, man. Any type of crazy crime or any type of crazy like distinctness, individualness.
Yeah, even like cartels and stuff too, right? Like just the horrific things they do, just like amped up and you can do like anything. But it's 4K, just crank it up to 11.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In a galaxy dominated by eternal war, these gangs are empires built on ruin and ash, monuments to humanity's darkest ambitions. They thrive in the darkness, becoming legends in the minds of the desperate and the damned, growing strong as the Imperium's back is turned. For in the 41st millennium, survival is a currency bought with blood, and only the ambitious and the ruthless ever prosper. I like how this is like a dark mirror to the Imperium, and we all know how crapsack the Imperium is, anyways. So it's just like it's just another bloated carcass, a bloated cog in the machine that's going to last any longer than like anybody would hope, and it's just going to get worse and worse.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of these gangs and stuff you wouldn't even be able to tell from like the common citizenship, like there's just so many seedy places in the galaxy that these things could pop up and where you have to do it, and there's just no other way about it. Even the gangs, I wonder even if they would kind of help like defend planets in an invasion and stuff of xenos, if they would kind of get involved, or if it's more they would use it as opportunity to kind of make their own kingdom a little bit bigger or whatever.
Yeah, all of the above, man. Like some of them could even side with
Yeah.
it. Imagine Tau coming down, and then this gang's like, "Hey, trade us some of your weapons, and we'll trade you some guys," right?
Yeah.
That kind of does make me think though, like how much more willing would a gang organization be to deal with, say, the Tau or, God forbid, the Dark Eldar, in basically any kind of matter? Because obviously, suffer not the Xenos to live, but
Yeah.
I think you could do like again with gangs, you can cut it any way, right? You could be really zealous gang, it's really religious, and you believe in the Imperial Creed, so you're not gonna ally with any filthy Xenos, and yeah, you'll take arms to defend your planet just alongside like the local PDF. And then on the other extreme, you're like a ganger who's like super ruthless. You never really believe the Imperial Creed. Sure, you say your prayers because you have to at gunpoint, but you don't really believe any of that stuff. And once the opportunity arises to, overthrow the nobles that are keeping their boots on your neck, then yeah, join up with the Dark Eldar or whoever will give you a chance at that shot, right? Or something in between, like just an opportunist that like, okay, we're all gonna lay low, let the chaos happen, and then we're just gonna loot houses, right? That are evacuated or that are raided. You could do any of them.
Or literally let chaos happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always imagine.
Yeah, and that's the other thing about cultists is, or like gangs, like they are so close to being cults. Some of them, I just don't imagine like a gang that does a bunch of blood rituals and takes skulls isn't borderline corn worshipping, whether they're aware of it or not.
Yeah, no, there's perfect, right? Or like the overly ambitious who trade in secrets and lies and deception. Suddenly they're treading on some cheat territory, right?
Yeah.
Now I don't like that chaos always has to be involved, but it is always cool to like throw them in the mix with all the other like just regular secular gangs too, right? Like,
yeah,
could always be a faction.
Or like when Nick made a point of, I want to say it was Nick, or was it Jax? Somebody made a point the last episode where like Eldar were created like some borderline cults and started up like their own hive gang to basically throw off that hive city. So what's to say there might not be some Xenos influence?
Yeah.
Like I said, anything's possible. And on that note, we'll get into hierarchy and power structures. In the criminal underworlds of the 41st millennium, hierarchy and power are carved from the flesh and forged in blood. Each gang and syndicate a vicious machine built on the bones of the unworthy. Every criminal empire has its order, each one a brutal mirror of the Imperium above, layered with levels of command that serve only to keep the ambitious sharp and the weak in their place. Loyalty is currency, obedience is survival. Yet, in this dark labyrinth, everyone knows that a single slip can mean death. Yeah, you did mention that earlier too, like that dark mirror of like people tend to form and organize themselves in chaos, right? So the Imperium is obviously the biggest juggernaut, and you have your noble lords that are like kind of backstabbing and doing the exact same stuff. These guys just do it at a more visceral level. You know, they're literally backstabbing people and robbing them.
Yeah.
At the top of the hierarchy stands the gang lord, a ruthless visionary whose rule is law. These are figures who have climbed the bloody ranks, either by cunning, manipulation, or raw violence, sometimes both. Known as kingpins, gang bosses, or crime lords, these leaders have an iron grip on their territories, a reputation that demands fear. Their authority is unquestionable. Their word alone is enough to end lives, shift markets, and topple smaller gangs. But this power does not come cheaply. Betrayal and mutiny are constant threats, and gang lords must strike a balance between fostering loyalty and inspiring terror. They are rarely seen on the streets, ruling instead from fortified dens, guarded by ranks of merciless enforcers. Any who challenge their rule know that failure will be met with gruesome punishment, and even victory may simply mean inheriting a seat of power rigged to explode.
Is this Cormora? What episode note did we write here? Jeez.
Plot twist. This is Kamara Part 2.
Yeah.
Another cool factor too that I think Gerald mentioned early on in the episode is those potential links that, like, yeah, some gangs are like self-made and like come from the bottom of the hive, but others do have powerful friends and eventually work their way up, you know, either patronized by a noble or something, right? They're like, oh, I hate this other noble house, but I don't want to get seen caught doing the dirty work, so I'll make friends with some crime boss in the underhive who will then like wreck their shipping or steal from them and send them weapons and money or whatever they need, right?
Or to even take that one step further, like there have been talks in like America and certain points in American history where like certain mob activity is kind of they turn a blind eye to because it helps the economy, or at least back in World War II it helped the war effort. So certain things were kind of barely tolerated or turned a blind eye to. So I could easily see a hive city like having that level of tolerance as long as it helps either the Imperial tithe or if it helps fend off a invasion of some sort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even using it to like suppress, like, you know, you could have a chaos of a three-way power struggle. So you're like, okay, we'll fund the biggest gang to keep the other gangs under control. Right?
Yeah.
Let them do the dirty work and we don't have to go down there and clean it up ourselves, right?
Yeah. It's like a weird gladiatorial warfare almost, where it's like, yeah, these high lords are just getting gangs to battle each other underneath to just distract the lower population, essentially keep it all in chaos so no one can really come up and take them out.
Yeah. Side note too, while we're talking about real life criminal gangs too, you have like biker gangs. A lot of them emerged after World War II. A lot just disaffected veterans coming back, right? They miss brotherhood. They miss, you know, hanging out with the boys, and you know, they crave that sense of purpose. So they start riding motorcycles together, and then that like evolves into things like Hell's Angels and stuff like that. So that's also an avenue you can explore too, of like Imperial veterans who are like coming back. They have these combat skills. You know, they're in a relatively peaceful world, and they're just, you know,
they're hooked on some type of crazy drug to help them get over the PTSD, and then all of a sudden they find themselves in a dark alley, and before long they're a gang's enforcer.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because there was an Eisenhorn short story that dealt with he was investigating a possible chaos cultist uprising, and it turned out it was just a quote unquote cult formed by PTSD affected guardsmen vets, and through their struggles, the horrors that they faced, like they ended up basically going crazy and started going after anything that even remotely looked like chaos, even though their victims were perfectly innocent, quote unquote innocent.
No one is innocent. It's just merely degrees of guilt. It's one of my favorite 40k lines. All right. Below the Lord are the lieutenants, the hands of the Empire, each one chosen for their skill, loyalty, or sheer ruthlessness. These enforcers act as commanders, each responsible for a sector or specific operation, running the daily grind of extortion, protection, and smuggling with ruthless efficiency. They are extensions of the gang lord's will, making their rounds and enforcing rules with zeal, keeping the lower ranks in check through any means necessary. To be a lieutenant is a deadly honor, trusted to act independently yet never beyond the gang lord's reach. They walk a tight rope, aware that a single mistake or whiff of treachery could lead to instant death. The enforcers form the next layer, a hardened, brutal cadre of killers, dealers, and smugglers. They are the gang's iron fist, feared across the territories for the brutal methods they employ to maintain control. Enforcers collect protection money, dole out punishments, and quell any signs of rebellion with bloody precision. They are often veterans of the lower ranks, having proved their loyalty and brutality time and again. Each enforcer is marked by scars, tattoos, or bionic augmentations, symbols of their service and status. Unlike the foot soldiers, they are allowed some autonomy, entrusted with select tasks, and often granted special privileges, including access to rare weaponry and combat drugs. But even they know that any taste of independence is fleeting. They serve at the pleasure of their superiors, their lives worth little more than their usefulness to the syndicate. Yeah, it's cool too how it's like they offer you the escape. It's almost like chaos, right? Like that seduction of freedom. Like they have these monotonous lives as factory workers or whatever else that they do. And they're like, okay, this is a chance to be free. But are they really free, or are they still have the boot on their neck of someone else, right?
Yeah, they got their quotas from the lieutenants, who got his quota from the lord or whatever. And yeah, they all got to still make ends meet. They got to keep bringing in that money.
Yeah, everyone serves someone.
And then once you slip up, hey, there's like 1,000 other people waiting to take your spot, just like with the nobles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they won't think twice about getting rid of you if you're not up to expectation. Below the enforcers come the foot soldiers and operatives, the bulk of the organization, a force of expendable muscle drawn from the destitute and the desperate. Some join willingly, enticed by the promise of power or a chance at escaping their wretched existence, while others are pressed into service, unable to refuse the gang's offer for, quote, protection. These soldiers carry out the dirty work, raiding, extorting, and fighting on behalf of the gang, each one an interchangeable cog in the syndicate's bloody machine. The gang's branding marks their bodies, either willingly or by force, showing their allegiances through tattoos, scars, and gear. Life as a foot soldier is brutal and short, with survival only guaranteed by submission and the hope of climbing the ranks. They are taught early on that failure is death, loyalty is survival, and dreams of advancement require both bloodshed and cunning.
Yeah, it's this weird position as like a lieutenant. You know, you want to keep your eye out for like those guys that are cunning or particularly brutal and stuff, and you don't almost want to advance them in the fucking rank because you don't want them to be equal and then all of a sudden overshadow you. So you almost like keep your eye on these guys, try to keep them down, but at the same time, you got to keep your eye on them and elevate the ones that actually deserve it, and that you trust and aren't going to betray you right away.
Yeah, I think it's a balance. And again, it goes to like the culture of your gang, right? Like maybe they really are super loyal and their loyalty is to the gang above all. So you have a guy that seems pretty promising and you're like, okay, when I die, because, you know, life is brutal and it's going to happen eventually, you can have my spot kind of thing, right? Like I'll take you under as my protege and then you can, you know, it's more of a loyal exchange. Whereas you said other ones might be more ruthless and be like, no, I'm going to keep everyone down who proves to be even slightly more competent than me because I need to advance, right? So.
I mean, that's a tried and true tactic before in history. So again, not legal advice.
Just because we've done it before doesn't mean you can do it again. Yet even among these hardened layers, a shadow caste exists. Informants, spies, and agents who work in the spaces between factions. These individuals are both despised and necessary, tasked with gathering intelligence, sabotaging rivals, and keeping the gang lord's gaze on anyone growing too ambitious. Informants are used and discarded as needed, rarely trusted yet valued for their information they provide. A successful informant walks a line even finer than that of any lieutenant, forever in the gang lord's debt, forever an inch from betrayal. Their lives are short and brutal, fought with favors and treachery, and often ended with a silenced shot or a slit throat when they outlive their usefulness. Beyond the formal ranks lie other players, smugglers, fence masters, tech specialists, and black market merchants, each performing crucial roles that keep the criminal machine running. While not soldiers, they wield influence in their own right, and their skills grant them special status. These specialists deal in rare items, forbidden technologies, and lethal toxins, trading expertise for protection. They're often the most dangerous figures to cross, for they hold keys to arsenals and access codes handling weapons and contraband that decide the fate of an entire territory. Their loyalty lies only with the credits and artifacts that line their pockets, bound to the gang by profit rather than allegiance.
Those guys are cool. The black merchants and kind of all those other kind of operatives that just they're not the grunts for sure. That you might not even ever see them in the front line doing kind of business, you know.
Yeah, you could have like a medic and stuff like that. Like, oh yeah, this guy is a vet, right? So he's got some medical skills. So we'll use him to stitch up our guys whenever they get in gunfights. So you're like incentivized to protect them, even though they're not necessarily part of your gang, right?
And I wonder how often. Sorry, I wonder how often the Mechanicus or the Dark Mechanicus kind of show up to make these kind of deals with either black market traders or these criminal organizations because they either have an STC or they have some kind of special treasure of technology from the Dark Age of technology.
I think
now.
Yeah, I think if the Mechanicus were to get involved, if they know you have something that they think belongs to them, they're not going to trade with you. They're just going to send their troops in and take it. But I do think that, or I wonder, I guess, like, no one is above corruption. And if, like, you have a rogue tech priest or something who's either, like, maybe he's the one dealing out special tech to the Underhive for whatever reason, for personal gain or whatever.
Yeah. I can even see, like, the Mechanicum, though, or just any organization having a hell of a time to root out gangers deep in the Underhive, and like even just getting the layout of the Underhive. You're like, okay, where the fuck are they even in this place? So I can see, you know, just for expedience sake, they could make some dirty dealings. And it seems like, man, like in the Imperium, as long as you're not really worshiping a chaos god, there's a lot of wiggle room in a lot of places for a lot of people. As long as you're not actively saying like, you know, fuck the Emperor, fuck the Omnissiah type situation, you can get away with a lot. Especially if you have something useful. Yes, oh yes. I played some role-playing games set in 40K before, and hoo-wee.
I got away with a lot.
I got away with a lot. I came out like a bandit.
Yeah. In the end, every level of this hierarchy serves one purpose: to keep power centralized, to ensure that control is absolute, and to maintain a reign of terror over the territories they dominate. Gang lords know that in the world of crime, only those who rule with iron fists and sharpened minds endure. Each rank exists to support those above and enforce control below, a pyramid where loyalty is enforced through fear and advancement is earned through blood. Every rank, every title, every role is a rung on a ladder built on violence, climbing ever higher, yet always in reach of lethal fall. For in the criminal underworld, power is not a right, it is poison, a dark and seductive force that corrupts everything it touches. The structure of these syndicates is a twisted mockery of order, a savage hierarchy where the desperate rise, the ambitious fall, and only the ruthless sit on thrones of ruin, forever ruling an empire of crime that the Imperium will never see toppled.
Yeah. It's a poison. Yeah, that allure, man, has probably been the end of many gangs of that just one guy who's like, oh, I could rise this one rank here if I just did this. And then he does that maneuver and the whole gang just gets disrupted. The whole organization crumbles and this guy fucked it all for everyone. Yeah.
Well, isn't the saying power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely?
Yeah. Yeah, and even just a little bit of power seems to corrupt a lot of people. So you don't even have to throw a lot at them, man. You got this hive ganger who's eating nothing but corpse starch and has never even seen the light of day, and he's like, I'll fucking do whatever I have to just taste a vegetable. Just wave that in front.
One piece of broccoli is all I need.
Yeah, all he needs to just uproot the whole fucking organization.
That's all it takes. We do have a question from the chat from Mr. Purge Seraph. Would gangs use xenos as enforcers?
Yeah, I could imagine, depending on like the hive city for sure. Like I guess we always go back to the perspective of hive cities when we're talking criminal organizations, but man, they're across every planet on every galaxy or in the galaxy. So depending on where they're located, I can just imagine. Yeah, there's definitely along the Damocles Gulf with the Tau and the Imperium. There's definitely some dealings for sure, but
Yeah.
you just won't really find xenos anywhere in the Imperium that's visible. Like yeah, the supremacy of humans is kind of inevitable in that setting where it's like we can't deal with orcs, we can't negotiate with Tyranids, we can't even negotiate with the Eldar without them betraying us. And I think it's been built in over 10,000 years of hate the Xenos, the mutant, and the heretic. And yeah, people always have their own views or whatever, but I think it's really drilled in that if somebody sees a Xenos walking around in the hive, I think they're going to report it. I think it's still like not kosher. They're not human.
That's a good way to get the arbites on your case. However, I do think there's room
Yeah.
for that in limited capacity. A cool example would be, let's say there's like an orc infestation in this hive, right?
Sure.
And your gang happens to capture an orc, and you just keep him chained up, and you just kind of unleash him as like a beast on your enemies. Chain him up again, right? Like there are ways to do it as long as you keep it secret, you kind of keep it out of the arbites, or you at least pay them off for it.
Exactly.
Rogue traders, Mark, we really got to do a rogue traders episode. Rogue traders are actually able to have aliens in their entourages. They often get like some special permission from the Inquisition, and they get like special badges and stuff to allow that.
Yeah.
But they're like rogue traders are playing on a whole different level. But presumably, you have the two extremes, right? Like your gang could be super xenophobic themselves. They would never work with a filthy Xenos, right?
Yeah.
Or you could be on the other end of the spectrum, like I said, like, okay, the Imperials, like you said, on the Damocles Gulf planet, already been half invaded by Tau. They've been fighting for 10 decades. A couple Tau might sneak their way or sneak their technology to your gang. You have a couple allies, either a specialist that you keep kind of hidden on the down low or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So you could play it from so many different angles. So I think it's possible. It's probably not super common, but certainly if you can think of a good way to implement it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not gang related, but I mean there are certain inquisitors that may or may not have Eldar or other aliens in their entourage as well. But again, just like the rogue traders, they have to have certain special permissions to be able to do such a thing so openly.
Yeah. Yeah, I just feel like that'd be such a good way for gangs to team up. Like, hey, that gang over there is using Xenos. Like, get them. Tell the high lords on this planet or whatever. Like, it's just putting extra target on your back, I feel like.
Yeah.
And
like that bigotry is kind of like 10,000 years ingrained in the humans too, right? So it's not common that you'd find humans that would be necessarily willing if they themselves like, oh, gross, like we're not working with them.
Yeah,
exactly. But if you really want to take it to a grimdark level, they find that, they report it to the High Lords of Terra. Well, guess what? Oh, that was a gene stealer cult infestation. Here come the Tyranids, exterminatus.
Yeah, you just screwed yourself. You reported them.
Happy ending in my mind. Just another planet exterminated for the Emperor. Hooray!
All for the Emperor, of course.
Yeah.
But one more question before we move on, and this is kind of what we were talking about with the tolerated crime earlier. Another question from Purge is on the other side of the spectrum, how would the Imperium use gangs to support its agenda?
Yeah, I can just imagine like some noble or whatever on that planet just hiring out the biggest gang to be like, we'll keep you wealthy. Your only job is to make sure no gang in the Underhive gets bigger than you. And in return, we'll keep you wealthy. You don't come up here, and life will be good for everybody.
Yeah. Another interesting one that we know of too is space marines even recruit from gangs. So sometimes they keep that like hostile environment on purpose to keep strong potential candidates for future use as like either guardsmen. It's the Necromunda hivers that often get recruited into the guard because again they grow up with those kind of like fighting spirit, ambition, skill that they develop in the Underhive. And then same for potential Space Marine aspirants. You know, your 12-year-old boy that's already killed like 50 people with your bare hands. Like, they use that for recruiting potential. Funny fact, in real life, we have, other than like, you know, penal troops that like the Soviets would have used, that you like kind of gang press and like tell them to run through a minefield or something. In the West, we used to try and recruit criminals and stuff, thinking like in World War I, they recruited a bunch of like gangsters and stuff, thinking like, oh yeah, they fight on the streets and stuff, like they're rough and tumble. And they didn't make the greatest soldiers because they were really selfish in like self-preservation, right? Like that's how they lived on the streets, was out of self-preservation. So things like working together as a team, which is like critical for like a unit, didn't work out so well in the trenches.
Yeah.
So just a fun fact I thought of with the Necromunda thing.
Yeah. Cool. We'll go on now to how gangs maintain power and control. In the brutal, unforgiving depths of the criminal underworld, power is never freely given and never fully secure. It is a commodity taken by blood, forged by fear, and held through the ceaseless vigilance of those ambitious and cunning enough to wield it. Maintaining control over a criminal empire in 40K requires more than brute force. It demands a complex machinery of loyalty, terror, manipulation, and ceaseless watchfulness. Each gang, syndicate, and cartel in the Dark Dominion survives only as long as they can keep its grip tight on those beneath and its enemies forever at bay. A criminal empire is built first on loyalty, an allegiance bought with both promises and threats, binding every member to their gang lord as if to a god. This loyalty is maintained through rituals of blood and brotherhood, acts of initiation that leave scars as deep as the alliances they secure. Those who prove their worth are rewarded, given status and privileges in the world that offers them nothing but cruelty. Rank within the gang is earned through displays of loyalty and willingness to kill on command. Ambition is encouraged only as long as it serves the gang lord. To break rank, to falter, to question is to sign a death warrant. In this world, loyalty is survival and betrayal is the ultimate transgression. Fear, however, is loyalty's sharper edge. Gang lords and enforcers wield fear like a weapon, a tangible force used to keep each member tightly under control. Punishments are designed to be both painful and public, every beating, mutilation, and execution serving as a warning to others. The bodies of traitors and cowards are hung from the Underhive walls or left to rot in the toxic streets, a reminder to those who fail their duty will not find mercy. Even the most hardened enforcers know the fear of the gang's to fear a gang lord's wrath, for mercy is weakness and weakness is death. The gang lord is as much a figure of terror as of loyalty, a nightmare lurking behind every failed mission or whispered betrayal. This regime of fear and loyalty is underpinned by a dark network of spies and informants, the unseen eyes and ears that ensure no secret remains hidden for long. Every gang knows that information is power, and knowledge of rivals, assets, and threats become a currency more valuable than any black market gem. Spies are deployed to monitor members, to report any whisper of dissent, any flicker of disloyalty. They infiltrate rival gangs, slip information to corrupt officials, and blackmail those weak enough to exploit. In the criminal world, trust is a rarity, and secrets are weapons. No one knows who is watching, but everyone knows someone is. That's a fun line. A simple nod from an informant can bring the full wrath of a gang crashing down on those foolish enough to betray them. Beyond fear and loyalty, maintaining power requires resources, and for that, the gang must hold territory. Territory is more than land. It is a source of revenue, a place to enforce dominance, and a hunting ground for resources. Each block, each slum, each underhive market is a prize won by violence and guarded with deadly force. These territories are patrolled by enforcers, ruled by fear and taxed to free the gang's coffers. Every tribute paid by merchants, every toll extracted from travelers, every protection fee collected from the locals builds the gang's wealth and reinforces its grip on power. Controlling the territory is not only a means of income, but a statement of supremacy, a reminder to all that this ground is theirs and that any trespassers will be dealt with savagely. Purge says, kind of sounds like cartels, which at the time have been supported by the CIA to further its foreign policies, just as the Imperium would support gangs and its agendas. Yeah, man. Some would say the government is the biggest gang of them all. But those people usually find up dead or on Hillary Clinton's death list. So, you know, you just got to be careful who you're slandering is all.
Oh, no.
Yeah. The CIA thing, they often used cartels to fight communist guerrillas, especially like in Latin America. I suppose they could. I'm just trying to think of how that could be used in like a 40K context, because you're dealing with an external threat, right? Like, and it's funny because the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency, was also trying to crack down on gangs. So you have the government fighting itself with like, and it's a very 40K thing to do, where you have like two organizations to tackle two different problems and actually fighting each other. So they're just wasting money.
I mean, that sounds like a very 40K thing anyways. You got
No, I know, absolutely.
You got the PDF that are trying to fight the petty crimes. Well, all of a sudden it turns into a imperial crime against the emperor. So now the Arbites are involved. Hold on, all of a sudden it's a chaos incursion. So now you got to bring in the Imperial Guard to handle an invasion. So it's everybody against everybody.
Lovely, perfect. What a lovely little place they've made for themselves to live. But wealth alone is never enough. It must be spent wisely to fortify the gang's influence. Bribery flows through the veins of the underworld like lifeblood, greasing the wheels of corruption. Corrupt adeptus arbites, complaint officials, and ambitious bureaucrats all receive their share of illicit wealth. Each one bought off to look the other way, to delay enforcement or to pass down valuable information. Through these dark alliances, the gang's influence extends far beyond its own borders, reaching into the halls of power to protect its members and ensure their freedom to operate. The gang lord knows that money buys allies, but fear keeps them, and so the bribes are accompanied by thinly veiled threats. You never know if he's handing you a dollar bill or a bomb. It's perfect. The gang lord knows that money buys allies and fear keeps them, and so bribes accompany them in thinly veiled threats, promises that failure to cooperate will bring consequences far worse than a mere loss of wealth. In times of conflict, when rival gangs threaten or the Arbites close in, maintaining power becomes a deadly game of strategy and ferocity. The gang's fighters are armed not with just guns, but forbidden war gear, exotic blades, toxic gas grenades, stolen las rifles, and even the raw brutality of combat drugs. Battles are fought with ruthless efficiency, ambushes, and shock tactics designed to shatter enemies' morale. No mercy is given, no quarter offered. Territories are defended with walls of flesh and fire, and each victory is celebrated with brutal public displays meant to terrify rivals into submission. Conflict is inevitable, and those who emerge victorious can claim not just power, but the fear and respect of every gang in the Underhive. Man, this makes me want to go watch the movie Gangs of New York. They have that one brutal scene where they all just fight in the street with fucking like hatchets and like whatever they have on hand. Yeah. That's incredible.
On the other end of the spectrum, there's a movie called BOP, B-O-P, which is about like the elite Brazilian police with the favelas in Brazil. And they're like pretty much like special forces soldiers, because their gangs are so well armed and developed that they're not just doing like regular street cop stuff. They need like tactical enforcement. And some of the areas they can't even go into because the gangs just control the region and will just shoot on sight. Like, it's literally dealing with an insurgency. They can like shoot at helicopters and stuff that are just trying to do like patrol. And I imagine a lot of the like 40K gangs, like they have access to like missile launchers and like armored vehicles and stuff. So like when it's gang warfare time, they could even challenge the PDF, right? It just depends on like the strength of the gang and the strength of your local Arbites force, or even the local, whatever the local enforcement agency, because Arbites aren't always the ones that deal with it too. Like gang warfare is not just, a couple guys with pistols on the street. It's like actual warfare.
I mean,
Yeah, like a lot of these guys are working in like hive factories or whatever, and they're making weapons or even tanks potentially for the guards regiments or the Imperial war machines. So yeah, man, you get this gang that takes over this tank factory, and now they got fucking Lehman Russes driving around in the Underhive together, just blasting shit.
Yeah, you have a guardsman that's in a gang, and he steals a Lehman Russ, right? Now you're the biggest guys on the block. You just have the one tank.
Yes.
I think the U.S.
And-
has had a problem with gang infiltration recently, where gang members would, get recruited in and then learn weapons and tactics and things, and then they just bring that back to the streets with them.
Oh yeah, like especially certain. I mean, some police units are given like basically military grade weapons, and then if that stuff gets lost or, God forbid, stolen from any kind of either inside job from gangs, or if it's just taken during any kind of gang warfare, yeah, you're in for a lot of trouble.
Yeah. Purge asks, how would you represent a gang as an army on tabletop? Just in case you don't know, there is like, what is the gang game called? Is it still called Necromunda?
Yeah,
Necromunda, yeah.
Yeah, with all the different gangs. They have 10 different kind of gangs, all with unique model line. But if I was doing it on tabletop, I'd probably always lean into like Gene Steel cultists typically.
Yeah.
You could do guardsmen as well, would be decent, but the cultists kind of have that nice like ambush surprise tactic type thing. Not as crazy of war gear or access to crazy, manticore missile launchers or anything like that, but a little more grounded.
Yeah, they like the Necromunda gangs are very unique, and they like the whole story around Necromunda revolves around specifically Necromunda. And there's nothing wrong with like taking the models and like doing your own thing with them, but you can do something completely different too. You don't have to tie yourself to any one of those gangs specifically.
No. No, and even in this episode, like I think we only talk about one gang that is from that planet. Because yeah, that could be a whole episode all in it of itself, all those Necromunda gangs. But yeah, with 3D printing, man, we got a whole new world of options. Like you could really take from any type of sci-fi kind of looking models and just slap them in and make your own stuff. That's always what I loved about 40K, man. It's so hard to find something that wouldn't work. If you kind of are creative enough, you can make anything work.
Yeah, as long as you follow the rules of the setting. So
yeah. Grimalda says, at what point do you guys think a crime boss actually advanced to a lower high lower? I think he's asking if they ever advanced to like a noble or something, like a high lord. I don't think it ever happens, honestly. It's probably so rare that like one actually becomes a noble. I think it's just too different and too crazy of a jump. Like if you're working for a noble on the planet and you're a ganger and you've been working them for a century and you're like, it's time for me to become a noble. Is that noble really going to let you join his ranks? Like, yeah, how do you actually get that? Like, you can't really.
I think I would be hesitant to say something never happens, but I'd say it's super probably rare. It could be a cool, unique story for an individual. Since we're doing the pop culture,
like I said, if you're creative enough, you can make anything work. But yeah.
If we're doing the pop culture thing, a recent show that came out that was about to die, one of the sub stories revolves around like the Roman underworld and like Roman kind of gang activity, and it kind of revolves around a character who's trying to ascend from being like a peasant to a crime boss to actually joining like the noble ranks. But you also get pushback from those noble houses, and 40K definitely has that same political structure where you have like noble houses that you guys talked about last time, where you have like a lineage, you have bloodline, like you kind of look down on peasants as like don't bring that stuff over here, right? We're better by birth. So they're definitely, I would think you would struggle in coming from that background, the way you act, how you learn to talk, like they would all know that you're not one of them.
Well, let me ask y'all this question then, because I kind of want to amend what Grimaldus is trying to say. Maybe not ascend to like a noble, but just like what what would the chances be of just like going from a residential spot in the lower hive to either to like the next terrace up or to even like the quote unquote the middle hive or something? You know, just like a marginally better hab block than what you currently live in.
I think again, anything's possible. Every world could be different. I don't. Based on the stuff that 40K is reinforced, like lack of social mobility is a key element of the story. So again, every unique individual could have like a rags to riches story, but I would definitely think it's rare, and like you're kind of born into the social class that you will forever be stuck in unless you do something super exceptional. Like you could be a guardsman who's liberated planet, let's say, and then you get rewarded with a planet, like something completely crazy, but pretty rare. And it's in the theme of 40K to be like you're locked into your social class. It's very the error is not coming to mind, but yeah, it's very like not feudal. Well, yeah, feudal. Feudal is the word I would use. Yeah, exactly. You're born a peasant. People are born lords, and they are kind of like better than you just by right of birth.
Yeah.
Obviously, not endorsing that kind of system. Just saying that's kind of the setting that 40K is.
Yeah.
There was another comment too, where they asked about the other way around. A lord kind of falls to becoming a cross. That's definitely possible, and it's even happened numerous times. Or like a disgraced house or a disgraced noble ends up like, rags to riches is rare, but to rags is probably more common. You fall afoul of your political rival, see your house fall, and they do, and your house is, and now you have nothing, and you get to live in a hive with everyone else.
Yeah.
There's one example. There's a couple examples of that in Necromunda even.
Yeah. Yeah, like it just is, if you're a corrupt noble, that corruption, how long does it take before you're just a bad guy? Before you're a ganger yourself. Yeah.
Well, were you ever a good guy to begin with?
There are no good guys in 40K.
Exactly.
Yes.
You cracked the case.
Yes. Yet even the strongest criminal empire cannot survive without adaptability. The galaxy is a shifting storm, and the greatest gang lords know when to bend and when to stand firm. They form alliances with other gangs to achieve shared goals, then break them when the time is right. They adapt their tactics, their loyalties, and even their identities to keep pace with the ever-present threat of the Imperial attention. Some even go as far to ally with xenos mercenaries or to smuggle alien technology, trading forbidden goods to maintain an edge over rivals. In this world, change is both an opportunity and a threat, and only those flexible enough to exploit it survive. In the end, every gang's grip on power is a delicate balancing act. It is a throne of iron and blood, a reign maintained by ceaseless vigilance, brutality, and fear. The gang lord's rule is fragile, a fortress built upon ambition and guarded by terror. Power must be seized anew with every day that passes, for the criminal underhive is an empire, forever poised on the edge of collapse, sustained only by the ruthless will of those who hold it together. In this shadowed world, to rule is to both be a tyrant and a survivor, the last line of strength in a galaxy that offers no mercy, no forgiveness, and no second chances. Yeah.
I mean, all this sounds kind of like a Night Lord's wet dream, considering where they come from,
Yeah, until Tom Cruise comes and that's just the troll. Some people. Yeah. To maintain power, it's ever shifting, man. You gotta know how to play every game in town. If you're the gang lord, you need to know how to deal with it. You gotta adapt. You gotta deal with black markets. You're doing everything, otherwise you're just not gonna make it.
Yeah, and things change too, right? Like something you used to control last week, you don't control anymore. So you either try and take it back, or you're out of a job, and out of a job means you're probably dead.
Exactly. But I wonder, obviously the planetary governor knows about the tithe, how much would the regular citizen know about that? Like, obviously, you're told you're working in this factory, you got to make this bolter, righty tighty, lefty loosey. But how much is known that we have to produce a certain amount of bolters or people, or the big guys are going to come on down?
Yeah, you mess with somebody's prime factory, all of a sudden, some noble's prime factory, all of a sudden you got problems on your hand. But also, if you control that factory, it might have been worth it to take it. You might just be able to hold on to it. But yeah, it's that delicate balance of trying to take as much as you can, but not take from people more powerful than you. Otherwise, they're going to take from you.
Exactly. Now you brought the Arbites into this problem. Oh shit! Now they're calling the Inquisitors. Oof. Oh shit! Here comes a chaos invasion because of that. And then
all your stories end in Exterminatus. Okay, Gerald.
Pretty much. But that kind of leads us into the next main topic with how do these gangs deal with the Imperium? So let's get into this. For any criminal syndicate, dealing with the Imperium is a high-stakes game of survival and subversion, a delicate dance with an iron-fisted overlord that tolerates no deviation from its dogmatic rule. In the 41st millennium, the Imperium of Man is vast, merciless, and intolerant of any who dare to undermine its authority. To a gang lord or syndicate boss, the Imperium is both a looming threat and indispensable partner, a force to evade, appease, and manipulate, to ensure the continued flow of illicit wealth and forbidden power. For in this galaxy, the very agents of the Emperor can be as corruptible as the underhive scum they hunt, and the greatest criminals know how to exploit every crack in the Imperium's monolithic facade. Dealing with the Imperium starts with avoiding its gaze, for in a world where even a hint of treason can lead to purging flames, aka Exterminatus, discretion is the first rule of survival. Every gang knows that any direct confrontation with the Arbites, or worse, the Inquisition, spells doom. Gang operations then are shrouded in layers of secrecy, with lies and decoys planted like traps to mislead those who would pry too closely. The Syndicate keeps a low profile, its darkest dealings hidden in labyrinthine passageways, its black market bazaars masked as legitimate trade posts, its smuggling rooms disguised beneath layers of mundane bureaucracy. Only the most trusted lieutenants know the true extent of the gang's reach, and even they are kept in the dark about the Empire's full scale. Anonymity is a survival, and the Syndicate cultivates it with paranoid vigilance.
Yeah, you just never want to draw that eye of the Imperium on you. We were doing like the Severin Dominant, and it just seems like, as soon as the leader of that rebellion kind of draws the wrath of the Imperium, things start to really go sideways for him. You know, they can bring so much might to bear on you that
it's better just to avoid it altogether if you can.
Yeah, keep a low profile, hide things, hide in those layers of mundane bureaucracy that, no, we're not a gang. You just hide the paperwork a little bit. Like, and by the time they...
Sorry, you didn't file your gang paperwork, Mark?
No, it's just an organization. By the time they trace out all the taxes from going back like 10,000 years, you've already kind of filed new paperwork that just leads them randomly. I'm sure you could do you could mess with the bureaucracy and the Adeptus Administratum by just they send you file 4-8 and you send them file 8-9 and just keeps this fucking thing going when no one really knows what's happening ever.
And then all of a sudden you're lost to the cog of the machine, and then boom, just like you pretty much got free reign. But
yeah,
I know we talk about the Imperium as like a whole monolith, but Purge brings up a pretty interesting point of I kind of like the idea of a Marine chapter supporting a gang lord just to cause constant turmoil to have somewhere to recruit from, as mentioned before.
The Imperium are not good guys, and for them to do stuff like that, is that really any worse than them sacrificing a whole planet through a virus bomb to stop Tyranids? The Imperium will do all types of shit to try to survive.
Yeah, I think Imperial Fists, some of the recruits come from underhives around Terra and stuff. So again, it creates a good environment for like survivalists and of course the Night Lords just recruited straight up from like penitentiary worlds and stuff. But that's a story for another time. We're just
I wonder if there's ever like a solitary rogue space marine that returns home to set up his own criminal empire, or if his chapter training is just so ingrained that he would never do that.
I kind of picture the Fallen from the Dark Angels. Oftentimes, they're little leaders of criminal organizations, and they're using the gangs as fronts to further their power and to hide, and as bodyguards and stuff like that. So for sure.
Definitely. Again, it would be rare, but in cases where it happens, it would happen. Like we know, Space Marine psycho conditioning can be broken, hence they fall to chaos altogether. So, absolutely, I'm sure there's individuals that run off and become pirate lords or gang enforcers and stuff.
I like how we keep on pointing out, like, oh, such a thing would be so rare, but then all the stories we do end up talking about from Black Library are about those exceptions.
But here's the thing: that's what makes interesting stories. No one wants to read about the one guy who eats corpse starch all day and goes to his 12 to 12 job. Right?
Well, I don't know, man. What's he doing for work? First of all, let's start there.
He's a bolt mover. He just tightens bolts.
Oh, okay. I'm in.
I don't know if you go to Cold Open Stories, they have a couple audio dramas about such a thing, and somehow Colin does a fantastic job of making that interesting.
You know what? I do appreciate the odd story of like mundane daily life. It just shows like a cool insight that like life on the street. What is life like for the day-to-day civilian? Keep that in mind for a future episode. But also, you're not like the stuff that sells is Boulder Born, right? Like that's what people want to read. They want to read the exceptional stories, not the mundane. But
then you create this weird feedback loop of people complaining, oh, Space Marines are so boring, it's just a bunch of bolter porn, give them some personality. Okay, write them with personality. Oh god, Space Marines are so boring, they're just all a bunch of talk. I need more bolter porn. What do you want?
I have a solution. I have a solution. No more Astartes in 40k. Enough.
No, Mark. Astartes are 40k.
How dare you? I am still writing that Void Wraith chapter for you guys. I am not stopping that.
No one can stop Gerald from writing.
The other thing I was going to mention to you, Gerald, as you were saying about how we always mention exceptions, is, in a galaxy of quadrillions, even the rarest things can happen, right? Like,
and happen a lot.
Like it becomes a measure of probability, right? That's a lot of people, a lot of worlds, a lot of lives, a lot of, different situations that could play out. So that's why I always say there's room for almost anything. I will say almost anything because there's certainly exceptions and harder rules, but there's definitely ways to, work around. So
yeah. Oh
yeah. But that's also why it's so important for the hard and fast rules to be hard and fast. That's all I'll say.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Let's see here. Where is my place? When avoidance alone won't suffice, influence becomes the key to bending the Imperium to one's will. Corruption and open secret within the underbelly of the Imperium is the criminal's weapon of choice. Across hive cities and wastelands, gang lords bribe, blackmail, and coerce officials, from petty clerks to planetary governors, sowing a network of compromised allies and informants. Administratum bureaucrats are paid to turn a blind eye to trafficking. Local magistrates are bought off to lose records of illicit activities. And even the Arbites, the so-called unbreakable arm of the imperial law, find themselves accepting the right amount of credits to ignore certain sectors. The gang's power flows through these corrupted officials like poison in the bloodstream of the Imperium, enabling syndicates to operate with impunity under the nose of those who would destroy them. Where bribery and manipulation fall short, the syndicates turn to blackmail, a tool sharpened with meticulous care. The criminals know that every man, from the words are hard tonight, the lowliest enforcer to the loftiest imperial governor, has a weakness. Perhaps it's a hidden affair, a debt to unsavory dealers, or a secret addiction to off-world pleasures. Whatever the vice, the syndicate seizes it, twisting it into a weapon that binds its prey in the gang's interests. A single piece of incriminating evidence can transform an Arbites officer from a staunch lawman into a compliant pawn, forced to look the other way or feed false information to his superiors. Blackmail becomes a chain, linking Imperial agents to the Syndicate, ensuring their silence, their complicity, their betrayal of everything they swore to protect.
Yeah. Yeah, I find blackmail works wonderful. That's how I keep getting Christian on here. I got,
I keep
got
trying to
some
leave.
secrets
That's
against
the
that.
secret no one knows is I don't want to be here.
Yeah, you keep putting in for the last time, and
Yeah.
we're just reading the notes. Yeah.
When I thought I was out,
I
they
won't
dragged me
let
back
you-
in.
Yeah.
This okay. Despite their best efforts, however, sometimes the Imperium takes notice. Uh-oh. A crackdown, a purge, an investigation. These are the constant specters that haunt every gang lord's operations. When the Arbites or Inquisition finally comes knocking, some gangs choose to go underground, pulling their operations into even deeper shadows, abandoning territory, and burning records to eliminate any trace of their existence. They lie in wait, rebuilding, striking when the Imperium's attention has shifted elsewhere. Others, more audacious, choose a different path to sow chaos, igniting gang wars, triggering riots, and forcing the authorities to focus on civil unrest rather than the gang itself. Distraction is a weapon, a tool to be used to turn the Imperium's strength against itself, to hide in plain sight amidst the fires and bloodshed.
I'm excited to do the Arbites episode next week. It's almost like if we all get this picture of our mind of the Inquisitor shows up on a planet, and we all instantly are like, "Oh fuck!" But I think the Arbites give off that same kind of vibe too. Like if they really start coming down at you and like coming out of their courthouses and stuff, I'm sure it's elevated escalation for sure.
For some syndicates, appeasing the Imperium is a bitter necessity, a calculated act of survival. They establish legitimate fronts, carefully run businesses that hide their true operations in the open. Factories, trade depots, or mercenary companies become masks, each one an enterprise that allows the gang to blend in with loyal Imperial citizens. They pay tithes, praise the Emperor, and follow the letter of the law, all while concealing their darker dealings behind closed doors. These criminal fronts not only protect the gang from scrutiny, but in some cases even earn their Imperial contacts, binding the very authorities meant to stop them into unwitting partnerships. The Imperium's vastness is both its strength and its weakness, a machine so large that it often fails to see the rot growing from within. There are those, however, who chose an even darker path. Desperate or reckless, these gangs form alliances with the truly forbidden, heretics, xenos, mercenaries, and renegades cast out from the Emperor's light. Through black market traders, they acquire forbidden technology, alien weapons, or even deal in prescribed relics of chaos. Each transaction a gamble with annihilation. In this realm of forbidden pacts, gang lords exchange loyalty for power, risking not only their lives but their very souls. Some rise, wielding cursed weapons and arcane knowledge to carve out dominions under the very noses of Imperial agents. Others fall consumed by the same forces they sought to control, disappearing without a trace. Their entire legacy erased in the fires of an inquisitorial purge. Such is the price of power in the darkest corners of the galaxy. A fleeting supremacy stained by damnation.
I wonder how, like, obviously we've talked about how every gang's different, every world's different, but just like, you got 5 gangs on a planet. They've all been kind of duking it out for 100 years, and power flip flops back and forth, left and right, whatever. But eventually you start noticing that one of them is going even on a darker path. They start doing like demonic rituals and stuff, and that could really just start making all the other gangs notice and nervous. Like, okay, this guy's now really going to draw some attention here, so we got to gang up on him and get him out of here before the Imperium comes to deal with this threat. And yeah, it's like another one of those lines where you could get away with doing a lot of different things, but as soon as you kind of cross that chaos line, yeah, no one's going to be happy with you. Whether they're the most fervent ganger that's killed 100 people, it's not going to be happy if you start worshiping corn. It just is that next level of damnation.
Hey, boss, that guy over there seems to be collecting a bunch of skulls and blood. What do you think it's for?
Well, of course, he's fucking the skulls and drinking the blood. What's the problem?
Yeah, stop making it weird.
It's not. It's not corn, guys. It's Cahorne. It's a totally different individual.
We got a question here from Jacob. Have you guys talked about how the number of IG regiments are primarily made up of gangs like the Armageddon Steel Legion or Slavic Chemdogs? We haven't talked about either of those. We kind of briefly mentioned the penal legions in this episode, but that's another kind of cool example of criminals getting a second chance at redemption. Here's your las rifle and go die for the emperor. But yeah, there's a lot of cool Imperial Guard regiments to cover still. We'll get there.
For those criminal empires cunning enough to balance secrecy, corruption, and calculated allegiance, dealing with the Imperium becomes an art, a ruthless game of cat and mouse, where the stakes are nothing less than life and death. And in this grim universe, even the most powerful gang lords know that all the bribery, blackmail, and alliances in the galaxy cannot offer true safety. For at any moment, an Inquisitor may descend, an Arbites raid may ignite, and the full wrath of the Imperium may fall like a storm. But until that day comes, the criminals continue their grim work, hiding in the shadows of a galaxy too vast, too corrupt, and too distracted to notice. And so in the grim, dark future, where every man is a pawn in a game of survival, the criminals survive by mastering a rule as old as humanity itself. Exploit the strong, corrupt the loyal, hide from the wrath of the Imperium, and cling to power as a universe that cares nothing for the damned.
Yeah. Good rules to live by, I suppose. Let's try living by this moral compass for 1 week, and on the next episode we'll get back to you on how that all played out for each one of us. I hopefully will become super wealthy, and Christian will hopefully become dead.
Have you? Oh, I was gonna say Fight Club, man.
Fight Club.
Yeah.
Hey now, rule number one. Talk about Fight Club.
Mm.
It's an anarchy gang. A cult, some might say. All right. We talked about how all these gangs interact with the Imperium, but how do they deal with other entities? In the harsh, grimdark underworld of the 41st millennium, alliances and rivalries are as much tools as weapons and war gear. For a criminal empire, survival hinges on complex relationships with a vast array of entities, from cutthroat rivals to the alien and heretical forces that lurk in the galaxy's fringes. Every interaction, calculated risk. Every alliance, a ticking bomb. Criminal organizations tread a narrow path between opportunity and annihilation, wielding their connections as deadly leverage in a galaxy hostile to their very existence. Within the Underhive, rival gangs are both mortal threats and necessary allies. The gang lord knows that every territory claimed, every resource acquired, comes with a potential enemy. Rivals fight for dominance, clawing over scraps of territory or stolen technology. Their hatred is fierce as it is inevitable. Yet these same rivals can also be allies, united by mutual interests, or a shared hatred of some larger outside threat. Temporary alliances known as blood truces are forged in fire and blood, often sealed with ceremonial exchanges of weapons or hostages to bind the terms. Such pacts are rarely expected to last. When the Imperium launches a purge or a powerful outsider gang threatens, rivals may band together, if only to ensure their mutual survival. Yet every gang lord knows that truces are brittle as glass, ready to shatter the moment victory is within reach. Double crosses are common, betrayal a constant shadow, and to trust their syndicate's word is to invite disaster.
Yeah, it seems just like every choice it could be your last. Like every decision could be the last one for you and your whole gang. The people really are playing 4D chess on this one. The people at the top and the people at the bottom are just kind of along for the ride of it all.
Yeah, like, you might have a third gang pop up on your doorstep, and you and your rival gang that have been killing each other for years are like, let's team up and take out that third gang. They're like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And then use that opportunity to backstab you right as soon as you get into a gunfight, right? And then kill you and all your friends. So,
Yeah, when the blood dries on the blood truces, that's when the
Yeah.
truce is over type thing, and it dries quick.
You get that tattooed on your sleeve, Mark?
Yeah, forehead. Oh, I only do get
Yeah.
forehead tattoos from now on. Yeah,
Right.
I'm a rugged individualist after all.
Beyond the hive and its rivalries lies the world of trade and black market connections. Criminal empires maintain delicate relationships with smugglers, rogue traders, and even corrupted members of the Adeptus Mechanicus to acquire exotic technologies and rare resources. These entities provide the lifeblood of the criminal underworld, weapons, forbidden substances, and arcane equipment that fuel the gang's power. Rogue traders, with their access to interstellar trade routes, are coveted allies, bringing xenos artifacts, combat drugs, and proscribed war gear from the galaxy's darkest corners. These rogue merchants operate on the fringes of imperial law, exchanging goods without questions, so long as the payment is right. Deals with such traders are always shrouded in secrecy and paranoia, as both parties are acutely aware that any misstep could spell their undoing. For the gangs, the trick is knowing when to pay and when to bargain, and when to intimidate. Too much force risks scaring off a valuable ally. Too much leniency invites exploitation. There's also elements to like pirates and stuff that could like raid imperial ships and then bring their goods. You know, they can't sell it back to the Imperium because they'll just shoot you. But you know, they could have a link with a gang that will give them like clean money, like launder money back to the pirate gang, and then the pirate can offer their supplies to the gang. So
I mean, I feel like that would be a pretty good episode too. Is just like space pirates, because everyone likes pirates. That would just be it would fit.
Yeah, you got corsairs, you got freebooters, you got I don't know, Trazen the Infinites going around pillaging and looting things, I guess. Yeah, all types of cool pirates.
Who are those space marine pirates? Void corsairs.
Red corsairs, yeah. The criminal underworld's connections extend to even xenos entities. A partnership so forbidden, it brings a threat of annihilation by the Imperium's zealous purges. Alien merchants and mercenaries can provide access to technology that is both potent and terrifying, from advanced energy weapons to psychic amplifiers and bioorganic horrors. To deal with xenos is to play with fire, risking not only the Imperium's wrath, but also the unpredictability of the alien agendas. Dark Elder mercenaries, for example, can be hired for their lethal skills, but payment often requires offerings in suffering and lives, a cost most gang lords find harrowing, even by their own brutal standards. Orc freebooters can be enticed with loot or promise of good fighting, though they're as likely to turn on their allies as they are to follow orders. To forge such alliances is to take a plunge into chaos, and only the most desperate and powerful gang lords dare to tread the path. Those who do, however, wield alien war gear that makes them feared across entire sectors, securing the edge no imperial technology can match. Yeah, it kind of is that thing we were talking about earlier, where it's like, yeah, you could deal with xenos, but now you got the Eye of the Imperium on you, and now you're in for a real fight.
Yeah, it might not be worth the risk.
Yeah. On the edge of reason, there are those criminal syndicates that delve into forbidden realms of the warp, allying with rogue psychers, heretic cults, and even the dark forces of chaos itself. Such relationships are perilous, offering both immense power and unspeakable damnation. Heretical cults, eager to spread the corrupting influence of their dark gods, sometimes ally with the gangs to sow chaos and anarchy within Imperial-controlled worlds. These cults promise gang lords otherworldly power, invincibility, or arcane knowledge in exchange for blood sacrifices or loyalty to some unholy deity. The warp-born gifts they offer, psychic enhancements, cursed weapons, or mutations granting terrible strength, are dangerous as they are tempting. Many gangs hunger for supremacy, accept these dark gifts, only to find themselves slaves to the warp, their humanity slowly devoured by the very powers they sought to control. Those few gang lords who manage to survive such bargains, however, become forces of terror, wielding forbidden powers that make even the hardened killers of the Hive tremble. On the opposite side of the spectrum are mercenary companies, bounty hunters and assassins, whose loyalty can be bought with enough credits. These professionals are hired not only for protection, but also to eliminate rivals and to enforce gang lords' wills. Mercenaries are often ex-military, bringing with them disciplined, brutal efficiency that syndicates value for high-stakes operations. Some mercenary companies, such as those operated by retired Imperial Guard or Rogue Astartes veterans, are worth entire armies. Their presence intimidating enough to keep even the most brazen rivals at bay. But mercenaries are only loyal to coin, and every gang lord knows that a paid ally can become a deadly foe the moment a better offer is made. Contracts with mercenaries are meticulously written, filled with safeguards, and sealed with the threat from swift ambition should they betray the syndicate. Bounty hunters and assassins are valued for their discretion and lethality, called upon to eliminate targets without attracting attention, ensuring that rivals, defectors, or troublesome officials disappear without a trace. To survive in the Underhive, criminal organizations must maintain fragile alliances with corrupt elements of the Adeptus Mechanicus, whose access to technology and knowledge is invaluable. The Mechanicus provides cybernetic enhancements, weapon repairs, and access to forbidden tech, all under the table. In exchange, the Mechanicus receives steady payment for the occasional sample of xenos artifacts and ancient relics by the gang that it acquires. Tech priests, with their cod pragmatism, rarely balk at dealing with criminals, so long as their experiments and acquisitions remain undisturbed. However, this relationship is fraught with risk, as the Mechanicum holds both the knowledge and resources to turn on a gang if it perceives an imbalance of power. Trusting the Mechanicus is a gamble, and wise gang lords ensure that they have leverage, something to make the most arrogant magos think twice before betraying them. You guys are both muted if one of you is trying to talk.
Sorry, my computer was spritzing out. But yeah, just like I like how the questions that we were posing earlier are being answered right here. Like about what about the Mechanicus
Yeah.
interacting with the fingers and stuff.
Yeah, they seem very willing to do it. Like they said that the quest for knowledge doesn't have many limits or many well, you can't get the knowledge if you have to do X. You know, they're gonna get the knowledge. That's the religious duty.
Yeah, like that supersedes any kind of like moral laws. Their law of the divine, which to them is like technology, the acquisition of knowledge. So
yeah. In the underworld of the 41st millennium, alliances and amenities. Amenities shift as frequently as the tides of the warp. Every gang, cartel, and syndicate. Oh, I got it, sneeze. Sorry, guys. Okay, I freaked my cat out. That was fun. Launched it across the room. Every gang, cartel, and syndicate knows that relationships with... Yeah, you heard that little meow?
Yeah.
Not happy with me. Knows that the relationship with other entities are built on exploitation, control, and the constant threat of betrayal. The line between ally and enemy is as thin as a razor, and each interaction is a calculated gamble with life and power on the line. No alliance is sacred, no trust absolute. The criminal empires live by the code of the ruthless, exploit every weakness and use every resource, and abandon alliances the moment they become a burden. And so the criminal underhive festers and thrives, clinging to the dark bargains in a galaxy that cares nothing for the damned. Only the strongest, the most cunning, and the most ruthless survive, navigating a web of alliances and what is the fuck is that word?
Enmities.
Yeah. Okay.
And like enemies.
Yeah. Okay. That's kind of what I assume, but weird.
Yeah.
Word. In a world where death lurks behind every promise and betrayal waits in every shadow. Okay, so here's the question. So these gangs probably have done dealings with Dark Eldar before. Do you think you can buy Incubi and rely on their trust, or does their Incubi trust only extend to other Dark Eldar? Do we know?
I think Eldar are pretty racist. I think.
Definitely.
I doubt they would.
Yeah.
Again, there's always room for an exception. Maybe that's trying to earn some rep is going to work for some human crime boss, but I doubt it's common, if at all.
I mean, I feel like 9 times out of 10,
I don't
going to be like. Sorry. I feel like 9 times out of 10 it's just gonna be like, oh, silly Monkai, oh, but no, like they have to really give them something, an offer they can't refuse to even buy Incubi's loyalty for however long.
Yeah, like, and even the incubi, like, what do they want? They want souls. So, like, does that really something that the gang has to offer? Like, I suppose, yeah, they can always give them gangers or hive members or whatever, but like, you know, it's not just coin or resources. It's people. And once again, you start tapping into people, you might draw the wrong forces, the wrong people. It's like, you know, the Arbites are like, this gang is shipping. Yeah, why are my workers all gone all the time? Like, yeah, then you draw their attention. So, yeah, I think you guys are right on that one. Like the incubi, you know, I'm sure actually they would even laugh. Like they would pretend, yeah, you can trust us. We're the only one in all of Cormorant you can trust. And day one, they betray them, and all the other Dark Eldar are just laughing along. You know, like
yeah. They just take you to be a soul.
Yeah.
So
a question we got is how would a gang operate on a feudal world? You know, probably much of the same. One thing I'll say about feudal worlds is people are often mistake feudal worlds and like medieval dark age technology. Like feudal is a style of like governance where like medieval is more of a technological level. So in a feudal world, yeah, you probably wouldn't be that much different. You know, there's nobles on that planet that you could buy and bribe. Everyone else is kind of a filthy peasant, essentially. So the only way to kind of improve your life would be to do some crime because there's no legal way to improve your life.
Yeah.
Let me pose this question to Purge. Assuming this feudal world also has medieval level technology, have you seen Game of Thrones? There you go.
Yeah. Which is obviously based off of real life, right? Like gangs have existed anywhere that humans have existed. Like Mark said, the biggest gang is government. So
yeah. Don't quote that to me, though. Otherwise, no, I'm fine. I'm in Panama. It's fine. You can quote anything to me.
Yes.
Hashtag B team complaints.
All right. We'll jump to equipment, war gear, and tactics. In the brutal underworld, the equipment and war gear of criminal organizations are as ruthless as the syndicates that wield them. Each piece of war gear, every weapon, and all tactical choices reflect the harsh realities of life in the hives, sprawl, and fringe worlds, where law is only an illusion. Criminal syndicates gather an arsenal that is a mix of brutality and ingenuity, scavenged from the ruins of the Imperium, stolen from planetary defense forces, or smuggled from distant star systems. For these gangs, weaponry is not a means of defense, but a declaration of power, a grim badge of authority in a world that respects only violence. Basic armaments. Oh boy, it skipped me on me. Basic armaments range from las guns to auto guns, and the workhorses of the hive warfare. While these weapons are only considered obsolete by Imperial standards, in the criminal underhive they are affordable, easily modified, and most importantly, reliable. Las guns, their barrels scrawled with gang symbols, have been modified to fire on full auto, delivering rapid bursts that leave only smoldering corpses in their wake. For those gangs who can access black market connections or corrupt suppliers within the Adeptus Mechanicus, more specialized firearms are sought after, such as needle pistols and hell guns. A well-equipped gang can outfit its elite forces with bolt weapons, though the price for such gear means that they are rare, reserved only for the highest-ranking killers and warlords. These bolters thunder through the hive streets, exploding in sprays of gore that cement the gang's dominance. These weapons are marked with symbols of death and gang emblems, wielded by individuals who know they are as feared as the weapon they bear.
Or they're gold-plated.
Yeah, man. Adamantium plated.
Yeah. Adamantium plated teeth.
Ooh.
Can bite through.
Yeah.
It is interesting to note that, like, auto guns in particular are typically outdated. You'll often find them with like hive gangers or with gene stealer cultists or with chaos cultists because las guns are the superior weapon in the 41st millennium. That's often where
like
you'll
auto
find
guns. Auto guns are just like your standard kind of bullet type guns.
Yeah.
So that requires then like the logistical requirement of ammunition. Where las guns, yeah, like if you're in a pinch, you can even heat it on like a campfire. Apparently, throw your battery pack in there, and it can kind of absorb it.
Yeah, borderline almost
not
infinite ammo.
Yeah.
Also, las guns, we kind of make fun of them and stuff, but they are actually pretty powerful. The way they're described when they hit targets and things like.
Yeah, like they blow holes in rockcrete and stuff.
Yeah, like it's on a spectrum, right? Like they are weak weapons when compared to bolt guns and like more advanced weaponry like xenos weaponry, but in reality they're better than our like modern firearms.
Yeah.
And like when you're shooting an orc with a las gun, like it might not seem like it's doing much, but if you shot a human with one, like that human's fucked.
Yeah. There was actually a quote that said, "Anyone who laughs at the power of a las gun has clearly never walked through a line of them."
Yeah. War gear is equally vital for survival. Flak armor is common amongst the underhive fighters, offering some level of protection against the constant threat of gunfire. However, flak armor alone is rarely enough to withstand the violence of the hive warfare, where every corner holds a new ambush and a new alley of rival, and every alley a rival. Gangs are able to afford carapace armor, hold a distinct advantage. Their elite fighters clad in plates that shrug off all but the most powerful rounds. Some even scavenge old Imperial guard suits or manage to modify protective gear stolen from the Arbites stores. To further protect their most valuable enforcers, a few criminal lords have invested in subdermal armor implants, crafting their elite lieutenants into nearly indestructible monsters. These soldiers become living tanks, shrugging off wounds that would fell lesser men. Their resilience serving as a powerful deterrent against rivals and the inevitable betrayal within their own ranks. Yeah, it would be crazy what you could get away with doing to some of these enforcers and stuff, you know? Yeah, they're modifying the guns and stuff and war gear, but they're also modifying some of their people too.
Yeah.
Or they're so hopped up on combat stims that like they're on another level in and of itself, you know?
Yeah, they're just some rage berserker that just won't drop even though it's shot a million times. It's not mentioned here, but there are, and again, I'm sure it's super rare, but there is also power armor that fits human bodies, right? Things like Inquisitors and Sisters of Battle use power armor. So it's not beyond the realm of possibility to get your hands even on a suit of power armor, which would be crazy. Space Marine armor wouldn't work with a human, because of the size, but also because of the black carapace connections you need. But certainly there's other suits of power armor you could probably find or steal.
Yeah. Or you just go find a nice little cave and you build your own Iron Man suit somehow.
Or that, like tech heresy is not an issue for these guys. They don't care.
In a cave full of scraps.
For stealth operations, certain criminal factions favor camo cloaks, modified to blend into the grimy hues of the hive cities and underworld corridors. Skilled infiltrators draped in these cloaks slip through the shadows like ghosts, knives and silenced pistols in hand, striking down enemies without a sound. Alongside these cloaks, many gangs employ basic but effective camouflage techniques, painting their armor and weapons with hive blend patterns to merge with the grimy metal and decayed streaked ruins of the underhive. A skilled criminal organization knows that brute force is sometimes best paired with stealth, and camel cloaks are treasured as much as heavy weaponry. We got a question here from Purge. How could a gang be able to use a knight? They could acquire it, but its machine spirit is a different issue. Yeah, that's one of those rules for me where it's like you're not piloting a knight unless you're part of that knight house. Like the machine spirit knows its previous ancestors, and it puts you in there. It will often even kill the pilot that's supposed to be in there if it's not right trained and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like, you can hack anything. You could get away with the throne mechanicum and get away with the machine spirit, but then all of a sudden, do you really have a knight? Can you really pilot it in the same way? Like, what are we dealing with then?
Yeah. Also, I mean, the other option too would be to corrupt the knight and pay off some pilot to join your gang. And you're like, where are you housing this knight? Or like the underhive is not. You're going to draw attention if you're having a knight walking through like your town, and can it even fit through the corridors? I'm sure it has happened maybe once in a trillion years. It could potentially happen, but like Mark said, the limitations of the machine itself. You're either going to have to like break it to use it, or corrupt the pilot, and then like how you're going to transport that thing to your planet. Like, not likely. I would say probably couldn't happen.
Now, wasn't there a story
and even,
of? Sorry, wasn't there a story of a night pilot that was corrupted? Was it either corrupted by a gene stealer cult or was a gene stealer cultist? Or am I mixing up my lore somewhere?
Now, I've been given shit before for saying I don't know. I haven't read every book, but I'm gonna go ahead.
Dare
and
you?
say, I don't know. Maybe that's possible. To me, once again, like the machine knows. Like you were plugged into it, it would know instantly that this thing is not human, and it will just turn your brain off and kill you.
I do think, Mark, just
Yeah.
kind of counter. I do think, again, it's potential if you are the appropriate pilot or veteran pilot, the machine knows you and you've been seduced by chaos or cults. Even alternatively, too, like maybe, again, going back to the gangs thing, you could be a gang warlord that's in a tight a knight, but like you're on a feudal world and you're just like a rogue knight. Like essentially you're a bandit knight.
Yeah.
So I guess from that perspective, anything is possible. It depends on how you read it. But no, you're not like a gang, some underworld ganger that like gets inside a knight and steals it.
Yeah.
This isn't Grand Theft Knight.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's a little much, but yeah, we'll carry on. Heavy weapons, when they can be secured, are highly prized by gang lords who want to dominate their surroundings. Heavy stubbers, grenade launchers, and even stolen plasma weapons are mounted on strong points or carried by the largest and strongest fighters. When rival gangs and Arbites squads approach, these weapons unleash a storm of firepower that makes any assault a blood-soaked massacre. The rare few organizations capable of obtaining flamers turn the gang wars into horrifying spectacles of fire, the flames spreading across derelict buildings, setting rivals and innocents ablaze alike. The psychological terror of these weapons is often just as valuable as this physical destruction. Gang lords use heavy weapons as a tool of domination, marking their territory with the scorched ruins of those who dare challenge them. Yeah, and like you can always spread it out so far, but like typically these gangs, they don't have access to a bunch of stuff. Like you're deep in the underhive, deep in the underbelly. Like to get anything really down there, it requires so much. Like, how do you get it past, first of all the spaceports to get it on the planet? Then how do you get it past that one guy who mans the elevator? And like, yeah, you can set it all up that you've been bribing people, but like they really don't have all this stuff in the world. Every gang might have like one really cool piece of war gear that's like incredible, but it's not like most are just equipped with las guns and auto rifles if they're lucky, you know?
Yeah. Sometimes it's just your fists and your knives or whatever weapons you
Sure.
can make.
Yeah.
And, I mean, and that's the thing too, is just like every single faction has that one thing that they're good at, but then they have that one weakness to where if every other faction teams up on them, then they're done. So that's what helps keep the stalemate of 40K as a setting.
We got all the guns in the world in this gang. It's just too bad as the initiation, you cut your index finger off. That's a little balance of power trip for you. Tactics in the underworld are as grim and ruthless as the syndicates that employ them. Hive warfare demands adaptability and merciless cunning, and these gangs embrace both. When it comes to taking territories, ambushes and hidden run tactics are standard. Gang members set traps in every conceivable location, booby trapping stairwells, electrifying door handles, and rigging explosive traps to make even the smallest advance costly for their enemies. Skilled bomb makers are valued assets within any gang, and their creations range from crude and deadly improvised explosives to purpose-built mines acquired from black market arms dealers. These devices are hidden throughout the streets to set to unleash destruction on anyone bold or foolish enough to enter the gang's territory. Psychological tactics are wielded as expertly as any weapon. Many criminal organizations employ brutal displays of power, leaving bodies hanging from lampposts, painting symbols in blood, and arranging grisly trophies to mark their borders of their dominion. Gang lords know that fear is often the best weapon and that the mind can be shattered far more easily than flesh. This extends to their dealings with civilians and rivals alike, enforcing a twisted form of loyalty within their ranks. To disobey is to face punishment. To betray is to face a slow, agonizing death. Such displays foster an environment of absolute control where even hardened killers know they are bound by the gang's merciless laws. Okay, we got another question from Purge here. These are always fun. We got a couple, actually. How would a gang be... Oh, we read that one. The other one. What about a modified dreadnought for a gang leader to be crippled?
My gosh.
Yeah, okay, so
wow.
yeah, like that's we're on the same level of these are very specific things. Like to be in a dreadnought and survive, I think you almost need part of the Astartes physiology, like both mentally to survive the horror of such a thing, but also like physically, like you know, these Astartes are ripped apart when they're put inside, and that might not always be the case, but like when you're tied into this machine, like do you need your kind of this Astartes physiology just to kind of be in it and to kind of maintain yourself in it? Like, yeah, that's kind of my thought.
Oh,
Maybe-
I 100% agree.
Yeah, maybe Dreadnought would be a bit of a stretch, but you could make the argument, and especially if your gang has access to, say, like a really good medical individual, or even a mechanicus individual that's been bought off. Like you could feasibly turn someone that's been crippled into basically Iron Man.
Yeah,
So-
like and that's the thing with 40K. Like you don't, if you want to toss a knight into your story, make something that is so much like a knight that I have to fucking blink and look twice. Make something so much like a dreadnought. Just don't call it a dreadnought, because that is.
Yeah.
Then you open this can of worms of like, okay, so how did you get this? How did you get the technology?
Fight off a Space Marine chapter for their dreadnoughts.
Yeah, and then like, did a tech priest wire your guy into this? Like, how'd you get the technology to get your guy wired into it? But now, if you came up to me like this gang, they've been welding pieces of metal together. One guy's a piston fanatic and has put some pistons on it. And then poor old Greg stepped on a landmine. So now he's got these bionic piston robot legs, you know, like. And we just decided to put his top half in a coffin just to keep it safe. You know, you can come up with your own things that are essentially the exact same thing without crossing those like not so invisible lines of lore that you can't really do.
Even when you're breaking the rules, you can do it in a creative enough way to where it's not actually breaking the rules.
Yeah.
Exactly. There's other machines too. The Sisters of Battle, I forget what they're called. But you see those like penitent engines.
Sure.
Like,
or like
steal one of those.
Sure. You know, I still can't even go to just like, okay, so you did steal one of those. Do you know how to wire somebody into that thing?
You'll figure it out.
Like, you figure it out, probably, maybe. Will you though?
I agree with you. Like the main
hive gangers aren't the most educated individuals, you know.
Sure, but if your gang is all about tech and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you're right. Like the go-to would be you built it yourself, and it's like it functions the same, but it's homemade version.
Yeah. He asks, so what would be the largest suit of armor that they would be able to use? Not wanting to build lore around it, more just curious. I think just like you could have something as big as a Titan, just don't call it a Titan. You know, they could build a monstrosity machine that they take over a hive with, but yeah, just try not to cross those terms.
Yeah. Yeah, you could say like they've spent generations building a small monstrosity, and like it took them, you know, many years and many workers, and then finally, they literally take over the hive with this machine.
Yeah.
That'd be a
for
cool
sure.
story.
I mean, you can even come up with like a Mortal Engines type of scenario, like a mobile hive city. So,
yeah. For offensive tactics, gangs use shock tactics to overwhelm their enemies, relying on brutal close combat and ruthless suppression fire to crush any resistance. Enforcers, heavily armed, brutal soldiers, lead these charges, wielding clubs, chain weapons, and shotguns modified to spread rounds for maximum carnage in the hive's tight corridors. Each wave of violence is relentless, a calculated surge that leaves no survivors and no witnesses. In the chaos, gangers wield anything from brutal melee weapons like chain axes and cleavers to industrial tools modified into weapons. And the hellish melee, loyalty, and survival are paramount, and every member knows that failure is not an option. When larger scale warfare is necessary, gang lords are not above hiring mercenaries, xenos muscle, or even rogue psychers to tip the scales. Yeah, that's one of the things here in the Underhive. Every battle it could very well be your last. Like, there's no prisoners being taken. There's no one coming to help you either, man. You could be alone here, and that's that. Like, the survival is up to you and you alone.
I would argue that taking prisoners might be a tactic if you want to have hostages to trade later, but
sure. But
I like
man, who's gonna feed them? Like, we're out of corpse starch, man. There's not enough corpse starch on the planet.
There's always an excuse
to
take a hostage, Mark.
Not for me, there isn't, Christian, and you better be aware of that.
I like how we're like talking like, you know, the nitty gritty, like shotguns and knives and stuff, and then people are like, "What about a Titan? What do you think they could capture?"
Basically, an orc stomper.
Yeah.
These are the guys asking the real questions here. Come on.
Yeah. Can you capture an Imperial warship?
Yes. Yeah, well, that would be a fun setting too for gangs, like on those Imperial Navy ships that have like 400,000 people on it. You know, deep in the bowels of that ship, you're coming up with all types of cool gangs, potentially. A different type of element of gang warfare where people, instead of, doing some things, they're launching corpses into the void to dispose of them. Yeah, the void walk.
I think they're actually are. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think they would be a little more strict on those ships. Like, if they see starting to get their entire force of the Navy on you. Not to say it's impossible. Those things are the size of cities, and they do have like ghouls that live in the bellies of those ships too. So yeah, not impossible, but I do think it would be more rare and controlled.
Yeah, like, you don't want to start a gang on the Space Wolves flagship. Probably not where you want to start your criminal organization. Yeah.
As long as they don't pick a fight with the Space Wolves, they can pick a fight with any of the other crew members.
Yeah, but then the Space Wolves will put it down.
Rogue psychers, though dangerous and erratic, provide gangers with terrifying abilities. Criminal lords use them to sow terror, and through bursts of telekinetic violence and mind-breaking hallucinations, sowing dismay among enemies. But these psychic allies are kept on a short leash, watched very warily by every gang member, as their power is often as much as a liability as a strength. Still, the power of a rogue psyker can be a game changer in close quarters skirmishes, turning even a loose fight into a nightmare for those who stand against them. Yeah, it's just another one of those, like, okay, so now you've escalated, and now you might be drawing the wrath of the Arbites or fucking the Inquisition if you're really unlikely. There's these external threats to the Imperium, and the warp is definitely one of the biggest ones. So to have people just freely tapping into it and doing all types of crazy shenanigans, yeah, that's going to go on people's radars.
And not just that, your psyker itself and a demon, and now that's your problem. Like,
yeah, and that's the other thing. Like, just because these people are in gangs, a lot of them are probably in gangs out of desperation, more so than being evil people. Like, summoning demons is an evil person. Killing a rival gang member so you can feed your family, probably still pretty bad, but not necessarily evil.
Yeah.
It's consensual warfare with the gangs. What are you feeding the kid? The
all
rival gang.
All crimes are equal in the eyes of the Emperor. Introduce bolt rounds ahead.
War gear in the hands of criminal is never just gear. It is a testament to their survival, a mark of status and ambition in a world where only currency that matters is power. Tactical prowess, brutal weaponry, and the psychological torment they wield are all but parts of the arsenal the criminal gang brings to bear. In the grim darkness of the underworld, there is no rules, no limits, only the drive to survive and dominate in a universe that would see them ground to dust. Yeah. Up next, I did kind of write some specific gangs, organizations, pirates, a couple different things. There's so many. And like I said earlier, we could do a whole episode on just the gangs of Necromunda. But here are some kind of cool ones that might get your brain racing of different little ideas.
Yeah, it's a kind of interesting because I mean, just like what we were talking about before, you have not just the stuff on the hive worlds, even though that's like the main part of our arc of hive cities and whatnot, but you also got pirates and cults and stuff. So in the vast and
Mhm.
brutal expanse of the Imperium, certain criminal organizations stand as towering examples of the violent and shadowy world beneath the Emperor's light. These organizations vary in scale and influence, from localized house gangs whose power holds sway in hive cities to galaxy spanning forces that menace entire sectors. Each is a product of its surroundings, and each thrives by exploiting the weaknesses of the Imperium. They are legendary for their ruthlessness, feared for their cunning, and hated for their defiance of imperial law. In the bleak universe of Warhammer 40k, these organizations are the undercurrents of chaos, heresy, and each presents a unique and deadly challenge to those who would bring them down.
Let me stop you there. I did write down hive gangs, but let's skip past them. I think I want to save all that for another episode. I don't want to give a little teaser. I think I'm getting episode ideas going here, so we'll skip past the house gangs and jump to the next little bit.
Fantastic.
These are called cold traders. In the endless void beyond the Emperor's reach, the cold traders operate as masters of the forbidden and the profane. They are smugglers of xenos artifacts, bearers of forbidden technology, and peddlers of knowledge that corrupts and entices. Driven by profit and ambition, they are the lifeline to those who seek power beyond human reach, ferrying relics from distant worlds, relics that can curse, empower, or destroy those who wield them. To the cold traders, imperial law is nothing but a temporary barrier, a challenge to circumvent and profit from. Their clientele is a mix of imperial nobles, rogue traders, and even planetary governors, desperate enough to dabble in Xenos mysteries. These smugglers are cunning, elusive, and calculating, moving between worlds under false identities and are always one step ahead of imperial justice. Each item they trade is a piece of heretical potential, an offering to the power-hungry or the curious. Cold traders understand the seductive draw of forbidden knowledge, and they exploit it with ruthless efficiency, knowing that every piece of alien technology they sell could reshape the Imperium or shatter it. Yeah, these guys are definitely cool. They just travel the galaxy, man. They're just going, and they're almost a mix of like Indiana Jones, where they're raiding ancient ruins to try to find what Xenos tech they can find from a dead empire, or they're dealing with the Tau and Watercast members and stuff. Like they're just going everywhere and really trying to get the crazy artifacts that no one else in the Imperium has. And if anyone does see you have them, it's like a death sentence for sure.
I mean, don't the rogue traders have a certain level of immunity to that too because of their warrant of trade?
Yeah, like, not all warrants for trade are created equally. So, like, yeah, some of the more powerful ones, definitely, they can deal with some Xenos and stuff. But maybe this one rogue trader has only been given permission to deal with the Tau. So, then it really kind of closes up. Yeah, because these warrants of trades, they're different. Like they're typically like you and your family, you can go to this part of the galaxy, trade around here, make this part of the galaxy your kind of bitch for the Imperium.
I mean, this is all. Yeah, and I want to ask more, but this also makes for a really good rogue trader episode that people keep asking for. So it's just.
It's a good thing we're doing Lorehammer twice a week. So then soon TM comes even sooner. Now it's just like close TM.
And now we give it back to you, the listeners.
Should clarify, a citizen is left to their own accords, not the crew. Okay, maybe I'd read the comment above. I was thinking a gang on the Imperial Navy transport, from what I read, they could have an entire colony that is left alone by everyone. Yeah, for sure. Should clarify, citizen is left there to their own accords. Yeah. Yeah, and the thing is, like, you can have the craziest organization spring up, but you just, like, try to keep them under the radar, Maybe they trade Xenos artifacts, but they just don't do it anywhere around any Imperial people, Or maybe they don't even deal with the Imperium at all. They just are trading Xenos artifacts to other Xenos for Xenos artifacts, They started with a Xenos paperclip, and at the end, they're going to walk away with a Xenos las rifle.
I'm still waiting on that trade Come on,
What do you-
someone's got to want the Xenos paperclip here.
Come on, give me them trade deals. Yeah, the cold traders are definitely cool. I'd never really heard of that term before, but yeah, it's a cool organizational type.
Yeah,
We'll
fantastic.
jump to a different type of gang, pirates, and we did mention them, the Red Corsairs. The Red Corsairs are no mere raiders. They are chaos-fueled, void-faring marauders who strike terror across the stars. Once loyal servants of the Emperor, they now live for the thrill of piracy, spreading ruin and chaos with every raid. Led by the infamous Huron Blackheart, the Red Corsairs have become one of the deadliest pirate organizations in the galaxy. They operate as mercenaries and assassins for hire. Their motives complex and always self-serving. The Corsairs are known for their brutal tactics, deploying corrupt space marines whose loyalty lies only with their warlord and the twisted ambitions that fuel them. Their ships, once proud vessels of the Imperium, now drift through space marked with chaos, symbols of chaos, carrying legions of deranged soldiers willing to die or plunder for the Emperor or for plunder and power. These Corsairs not only target civilian vessels and outposts, but are often found as hired guns in planetary insurrections or coups, orchestrated by those desperate enough to consort with heretics. The Red Corsairs are a conscious devout can fall, and in their rebellion, they leave only death and ruin, making them a symbol of fear and source of bitter resentment within the Imperium. Yeah, this is like an example of a big criminal organization, essentially, almost to the point of, yeah, they're chaos, essentially. But they almost kind of fall in that line where they're not necessarily worshiping chaos all the time, especially not everyone. And they definitely started out as more like a renegade little empire and not necessarily like, their turning point wasn't, we're becoming bad for the sake of being bad. They're like, we're sick of being told what to do by the Imperium. The taxes are too damn high. Rebellion.
I mean
but then from there, it's.
Well, I mean, we also got to consider too that they started out as a loyalist Space Marine chapter, so this comes to prove that even Space Marines, especially if a lot of them recruit from hive gangers, can become their own gang. But you got to consider they were loyal, and because of the taxes are too damn high, that led to the whole Bad Dab War, which that needs to be its own episode because of how massive that subject is.
Yeah, count it back. How many times do we say that needs an episode?
Yes.
Yes. Underground or underworld cults. Even more insidious are underworld cults, criminal syndicates that transcend mere greed and instead thrive on twisted faith and dark alliances. These cults operate as hidden sects within hive worlds, agri-worlds, and even on highborn planets, subtly spreading the influence of chaos or xenos power across imperial worlds. Some worship the dark gods, while others serve alien overlords or entities from beyond the veil of reality. The cultists are often driven by despair, envy, or thirst for revenge against the Imperium that has failed them, rallying around charismatic leaders who promise power, freedom, and forbidden knowledge. These cults are only indistinguishable from ordinary criminals until their true nature. These cults are often indistinguishable from ordinary criminals until their true nature is revealed. They lurk in the shadows, recruiting the desperate, the lost, and the broken. Their rituals take place in forgotten underhive shrines and abandoned spires, where unholy rites twist minds and warp flesh. Their strength lies not in brute force, but in subversion. They infect entire communities, drawing even the most loyal imperial citizens into the webs of deception. These cults pose an existential threat to the Imperium, for they seek not merely to profit, but to corrupt, to rot the Imperium from within. Each cultist is a spark in the greater flame, a flame that, if left unchecked, could reduce worlds to ashes. Yeah. We've kind of talked about the cults and just like how it's that next level. So it's like a lot of these types of cults will remain hidden until they're ready to reveal themselves. Whether their revealment means they have enough political power or enough firepower, whatever that tipping point is, but they definitely don't keep the chaos front facing. They keep that behind closed doors until ready.
Yeah. Also, to throw in another kind of group, some cults are actually like fanatically loyal to on the other end of the spectrum. So like House Cawdor and the Redemptionist gang. You have like ultra zealots who like will burn down anyone who like even they aren't actually heretics, but oh, you didn't say your prayer on Sunday, so we set you on fire, right?
Yeah,
Just
that
so
could be
extreme.
disruptive in its own right, for sure. Yeah.
The main difference is they don't have the blessing of the Sisters of Battle.
No ecclesiarchal blessing.
Unsanctioned, one might say.
You can start fires, Jim.
Unsanctioned prayer.
Other side on that note, though, is that could be because you always have that tension. Yes, you have like noble houses fighting each other, but you also have like the Mishkam and the church all fighting each other too. So it could be the reverse where, the church is actively sponsoring a radical gang that's like torching the church's enemies, right? Giving the church more influence, So I love how all these can go different ways.
I imagine how crazy it must be to figure out, okay, do I need to say these prayers to the emperor to this individual? Oh shit, do I need to make these prayers to the Omnissiah for this tech priest here?
Oh shit, I didn't fill out the proper paperwork after I did my prayers, and now the Adeptus Administratum's after me. Fuck.
And now here comes the Inquisition and Exterminatus.
No. Just because he didn't say his prayers.
No.
We're running out of planets, Gerald.
Oh man.
Purge has another comment here. He says, in regards of episodes, taboos of lore crafting is what I'd like to hear about. Yeah, so don't write female space marines is rule number 1. I'll give you that one for free before I give you an episode.
We did.
We have
Mark
done
a long time ago. I remember it.
We've done a couple, and Astartes lore help desk where it had kind of a little bit like, of course, don't write female space marines, but it talked about things you needed to include when writing space marine lore. Like, what is your gene seed like? What's that actually consist of?
Primarchs.
An episode of it. It's one of those things where there's not that many hard and fast rules, but at the same time, every faction kind of has one. I found it's almost impossible to gather them all into one place. But maybe I need to just start throwing notes into a file there.
Super Psyker Tau.
Super Psyker Tau, yeah. That's a great example of one. There are no Psyker Tau as far as we're aware.
Yeah, and something that we'd started doing too in Lorehammer Listener Lore I would ask Mark a couple of questions about like, okay, why is this a hard and fast rule? And then he could better answer that. So be on the lookout for some of that, and like especially the later Listener Lore episodes, if you're curious.
Yeah, it's tough being in the hobby for so long too. Like I've been in it for over 20 years, where I sometimes just gloss over things where it's like I've known that for 15 years, but it might be completely new information to some people, so I might not expand fully. But yeah, maybe that's a fun episode. I'll start putting together some notes and just see like how many hate crimes we can really come up with. Yeah. Well, we're almost done this episode. I'm going to drop a link in the chat there for anyone who wants to join our our questions here. The link has been dropped, and I'll read this last little paragraph. The galaxy's criminal heart. From the slums of Necromunda to the darkest reaches of space, these criminal organizations reflect the Imperium's failures and contradictions. The house gangs are a testament to the brutal society that values strength above all. The cold traders expose hunger for power that cannot be quenched, and the red corsairs embody the terrible allure of rebellion. And the underworld cults are a festering wound within the Imperium itself. In their ambition, their ruthlessness, and their absolute disregard for the imperial law, they are monuments in the darkness lurking in the human soul. In the end, they are more than criminals. They are symbols of humanity's endless thirst for power, rebellion, and survival in a galaxy where nothing is sacred, and survival is won only by the ruthless enough to seize it. You hear that, boys? You too have the heart of a criminal.
Don't we all?
Don't we all? Yeah, this episode was interesting. Like I said, I didn't want to jump into anything specific, but I hope this was kind of enough to get you guys mind racing and maybe write something for that Discord contest that we're doing. Like this is one of those areas in 40K where there's almost no limits, you know, where if you're writing an Astartes chapter, there's definitely a heck of a lot of limits.
I like,
but yeah, you have a lot of freedom.
Yeah, you have a lot of freedom. There are also, like, we did go over some things that start to get into the realm of extreme. Like, you just got to keep it plausible, you know.
Yeah, and almost keep it isolated. I find the more you stack different elements into something, the more chaotic and like unbelievable it gets. So it's like, yeah, if somebody all of a sudden has an Astartes thing of red flag goes, now if they have a bunch of Astartes things, now I'm like, okay, that's too much. Like, where did you get all that? Yeah, just crossing those lines. Just be aware.
Yeah,
you know,
40K still has a theme. It still has elements. Like, also, if your stuff is like just way too happy-go-lucky and like Disney, like that doesn't fit the setting. It's,
yeah,
you know, thematic is an important part of it too.
Yeah. I guess like you know, oftentimes the Tau get complained about that they're too good and not fit in the setting. So yeah, that's like, you definitely got to write something for the setting. You can make happy-go-lucky guys, but then like they're also crazy murderers, and that's what makes them the happiest. You know, that's
introduce that grimdark element.
Yeah, or alternatively, they can be happy-go-lucky guys, but the galaxy is so horrible it grinds them down.
Yeah,
sometimes literally.
That's the mechanic.
And emotionally.
Purge is asking for the Discord contest details. Yeah, go check in the Discord. There's a channel called Gangs versus Arbites Warfare. I'll give you a little rundown. It's write 1,500 words to 2,000 words about a gang or Adeptus Arbites on a very specific planet that we created with the Let's Talk Lorehammer boys, Matt and Bob. I forget what episode that was, but there's links in the Discord. So if you go listen to that episode, you'll hear about the world that we built as a community, and then you can write a gang or Arbites set in that world. So, and then after the end, once we kind of have done this for a couple of weeks, we've gathered enough stories, we'll pit, you know, gang versus gang and Arbites versus gang, and people will vote and see who comes out on top. Do the criminals or the law enforcement win?
Mark wins.
That's the goal, man.
Always wins.
Yeah. Last time I didn't. I even tried to cheat. I made a couple fake accounts. I tried to pull my lore helpers, but man, it didn't work. His lore was too superior to mine, and I got bumped.
The power of memes was superior to the power of the weeb.
Yeah, no, honestly, it was the power of memes that I lost to. Yeah, for sure. Winner gets feet pics? Absolutely not. That's an Eric situation. So you can go hunt down him and his stinky feet.
We're done with that. We're done with that.
We're done with that.
I still have his folder. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. Wait,
yeah,
you deleted it?
Well, don't you know blackmail is one of the top trades for the criminal organization? So
Eric is not a black male, I'll tell you that much. Anyways, so we got some closing questions here. A lot of these we answered already. So maybe do any of these questions jump out at you guys that you want to try to answer?
This one's interesting, is how do gangs utilize propaganda and myth making to cultivate loyalty among their members? It's cool that you can develop like a really strong gang culture, you know, like myths and stories, like what you're gang fighting for. That's a lot of character, right? You're not just thugs with no purpose. Like, it gives you a feeling.
Yeah, and you got like your new recruits, your youths running around passing out pamphlets and stuff, and like the pamphlets don't necessarily look like the gang pamphlets, but you can tell, you know, that the youths are kind of getting a vibe for people, and it really depends.
No, go ahead. I was just gonna make a pamphlet. Keep going.
Yeah, it really depends on like that gang culture that, you know, they've cultivated so lovingly for themselves. Yeah,
it could be a cult of personality. Like, is your gang leader like offering a bunch of youths like, hey man, like you have no future, come to me, I'll help you like get ahead in life. Obviously he's like a gang lord and like doesn't care about your
I'll give you all the feet pics you want.
Yeah, exactly. Says. Yeah. He only recruits a certain kind of individual.
And you also got to think too, like we talked about in the Hive City episode, that a lot of these people are probably not that well educated. Righty tighty, lefty loosey is all they know. So
yeah,
and then where do I get
were
my
they
corpse
taught
art
to
from?
read even? Probably not.
Yeah.
This question I found kind of interesting. What were you going to say, Christian?
Oh, I just one of the cool, couple cool models I like from the Necromunda range are like the rabble rouser and the propagandist. And yeah, it's just cool. They're cool elements. Where like, yeah, rabble rouser. You have a guy that goes out and just like turns discontent into riots, right? Like things start out normal, maybe something bad happens, and then that person's just able to manipulate the crowd and get them going, get them.
Yeah, that guy throws a brick at his own side. You know, he just throws a brick up into the air, and it will hit somebody in that crowd, inciting the violence. You know, and inciting that riot.
And yeah, like they can use that, like it could be gang sponsored, so they're using it to like distract the arbites. Start a big riot over here, let's rob something over there, right?
Yeah.
Or it could be a rival gang that you're just gonna mess with their territory and just start fights and chaos, right?
In the real world, I think it's called diversity of tactics.
Yeah, there you go, Mark.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then in the propaganda too, right? Like you have Imperial propagandists that are always there, like feeding you, you know, all the lies of the Imperium. But then you can also have like reverse ones of like gang propagandists, right? You have cultist propagandists. So I like the idea of like a whole propaganda war. And again, like you're dealing with like an uneducated population, just like getting swayed by whatever it is that happens to catch them.
Yeah. So this was a question I kind of chose. How do gangs interact with local communities, and what impact does this have on public perception? I kind of picture, you know, back in the day, you heard of mafia gangs that offered protection, and they offered protection from other gangs and from themselves, coincidentally. But also, like these mafia members integrated themselves into the community, and they would show up at like the community barbecue or whatever. And I wonder if there's ever really gangs that kind of operate with the community and are actually helpful alongside, or they're all just kind of, you know, obviously there must be some that do it, but like, I just don't see it being very common where they actually try to tie themselves to the community and like
they run the local soup kitchen.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way to say it, you know, to try to
real life they do it all the time. Like cartels will sometimes like create like a school or like a center for youth and stuff to like garner that public support. Certainly other biker gangs that will go unnamed garner public support doing like toy drives and things like that. So it's definitely something that happens in real life. And I like 40K is big enough where you could have gangs that don't care about that stuff. They just rule through fear. They will just put their boot on your neck. You fall in line or you die. And then on the other extreme, I'm sure there's gangs that are like, this guy started out as like a, you know, hive scum, just like the rest of the kids. And, you know, he actually does want a better future for them. So he will invest in the community and stuff.
Sure.
Sure, they have to crack some skulls once in a while, but, you know, that just comes with the territory. But
I mean, it wouldn't exactly fit the grim, dark setting if like all the gangers were just like your cartoon villain type of people.
Sure, but again, that 40K thing is like, it's that dichotomy of like, you have the most ruthless drug cartel that like strings up corpses and will like murder your whole family, but then they sponsor the local soccer team for kids, right? Like stuff like that happens in real life, and I think it is very 40K where they do great work, and then you look at the dark underbelly and you're like, holy crap, that's not worth it. Like,
sure, yeah.
One question that stood out to me was, what impact do gang wars have on the civilian population and infrastructure of hive cities? Because I was thinking through, like, throughout the entire episode, like you know how strict several hive cities are on, you got to meet your factory quotas, you got to meet your production quotas, you got to make that tithe. So it's just like, surely, obviously, not everyone is going to be just running off and joining these gangs and lounge around in like seedy underbellies. Like, you got to have enough people to partake in these factory jobs. So it's just like, how much does this happen without it disrupting the 16-hour workday of the average Imperial citizen? Or oh no, Jimmy's out because he went to go join the gold tooths down the block. Like, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and it comes to like too, if you try pushing too much or taking too much, you might just draw that eye that you do not want to draw. So yeah, they're not going to blow up a hab block because of rival gangs in it, and they're like fuck that whole hab block,
But then again, they might, right? Like it might be worth it.
They might.
They don't care about the consequences. They've screwed you over enough times, or this is your one shot to get them all at once and never have to deal with them again. And then just try really hard not to get it linked back to your gang that did it, right?
Yeah. So let me sum up this episode. It's basically me saying, I don't think they do that. And then you say, yeah, I think they do that. I say, yeah, I think you're right. They do that. And then you say, they also might do this.
That's why I'm here, Mark. I'm here to keep.
I like it. Yeah, otherwise I would be so limited and narrow visioned. You really have opened my eyes to criminal organizations that I could start down in Panama. Yeah. I got a boat, like maybe I'm some type of water gang. Hard to say. Smuggling things on the high seas of Panama.
Smuggling water.
Smuggling water. Yeah, perfect.
That would be a cool gang in like an arid world.
Yeah.
Last water on Terra.
Yeah. Well, do you guys have any other questions you want to pick out of there? I know a lot of them we probably covered just in the course of doing this episode.
Scrolling through them here.
In the meantime, while you guys are going through, I'll just do the last little end notes. If you like podcasts, there's other podcasts that we do. Lorehammer Listener Lore podcast. People submit their short stories about 40k lore, and I read them off. Sometimes Gerald reads them off. Sometimes, hey, I'm taking audio submissions for that. If you don't want it to be read off by me and have me butcher every word, you can record your own audio, send it in, and we'll upload it for you and share it to the public. We also got Christian and Jordan on the Star Wars podcast. If you like Star Wars, you can go check them out. Man, you guys are over 100 episodes now, which is pretty wild. Congrats on that.
We almost caught up to you, and then you started doing this dual episodes a week business, and now...
Yeah, I can't be passed. I'm the lead criminal Canadian here. Don't you worry about that. And we also got Gerald's podcast, Grimlore. If you want to go check out him and Ray, they do... it's mostly fantasy with a little bit of AOS, but also the odd time they talk about Halo or whatever kind of, nerdy sci-fi things kind of fit the tropes. So go check those podcasts out. Did you guys read any other question you wanted to talk about before we read Patreon members?
I don't know about any more questions. I think we got most of them answered, but we do have a B teams complaint if we want to start doing that at the end of the episodes.
Oh man, I need some compliments, but share me this one. Share one B team complaint with me.
And it's actually kind of funny that Christian is here because this was also partially directed at him.
It's always
they all are, yeah. So he's like, "Hello, I love the podcast. Fuck Christian, you guys are doing a great job." Is it pretty much every message we get?
So I guess if you wanted to direct any complaints towards the B team, you might want to specify B team complaints instead of James complaints. But I'm going to leave that up to y'all. Okay, so here's the complaints. To whom it may concern, pushes up, glasses up, nasally nostrils. Actually, today I write to you all with a heavy heart that I must lodge a complaint against my once favorite host, Trevor Buzak, and his so-called B team. While there are countless grievances that could be aired about the usual cast of this ill-fated show, one transgression stands out above all others: the blatant disrespect shown towards the Blood Angels' gene flaws. A quick search on any search engine would reveal that the Red Thirst is an intrinsic part of the original Blood Angels' genetic flaws, stemming directly from their Primarch Sanguinius. May the Emperor grant him eternal rest. This genetic curse pushes the Blood Angels toward an insatiable bloodthirst if not diligently managed. The Black Rage, however, is an entirely separate affliction. Unlike the Red Thirst, the Black Rage emerged only after Sanguinius' death, and it haunts the Blood Angels with visions of the tragic battle between Sanguinius and Horus. For a supposed expert host to conflate these two distinct flaws is, frankly, unforgivable. For this egregious oversight, I'd argue that Trevor deserves to be hung by his ankles above a swamp teeming with crotolid-infested waters. But as merciful as I am, I will grant him clemency. He may return to podcasting under one condition: a genuine, heartfelt apology to all Blood Angels fans. He must acknowledge his error and respect the lore that so many of us hold dear. If not for the angelically smooth voices of the B team members Gerald and Nick, I doubt I would have endured this particular episode on the Lamenters. Trevor, you owe them a debt of gratitude, thanks to their melodic tones. I am willing to restrain the full force of my wrath. Without their vocal talents, your transgressions might have been far harder to forgive. As a side note, Christian, it may be time for you to seek employment with the History Channel, given your overeagerness to reinterpret lore. And please, for the love of all things holy, stop mispronouncing Tyrannid in such a horrendous way. Blood for the Blood God, skulls for the Skull Throne, Toasty.
Wow. Okay, well, I guess Trevor Buzak, you're up. What do you have to say about such a thing? Fuck Astartes, first of all. In case I haven't made it clear, I don't give a fuck about Astartes. So, Blood Rage, Red Thirst. The only thing I know is when it's their time of the month, stay away from them. That's all I care about. Fuck it. As for everything else in that email, yes, they do have very nice voices. I miss Nick. I hope you're feeling better, homie. I know you're sick, and Christian had to cover you this time. Shout out to you. You'll be on the next episode. That's about the best you'll get from me, I think, about Astartes, and apologies. But that is a horrendous.
I was mentioned in that one. I wasn't even on that episode.
Yeah, I know. I'm telling you, man. Every email is like, oh, blah 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 blah. By the way, fuck Christian. Blah 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 blah. Every email. I don't know what we did to upset the whole world against you. I love you, but they seem to fucking hate you.
Oh man.
Well, that's me and my wife. We always joke about, like, I wonder if Christian's wife knows what online says about him. You know. Meanwhile, people are calling me a homophobe and a bigot and whatever, but they just fucking hate you, Christian. So.
And I didn't
for no
even do
reason
anything to them.
Yeah.
It's all right.
It's just like
every show has to have their bad guy.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us as the bad guy. Puma Lord, I hope Canada fares you well this winter and you don't get into any conflicts with cougars.
Yeah. Honestly, the snow hasn't been so bad yet. So it's already November and we only had one snowfall that's already disappeared. So we'll see.
That's messed up. I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
Oh, in November. That's awful. Did you want to thank your Patreon members here before we sign out?
Yeah, and then I'll also thanks Gerald. Hey, Gerald. Thanks for joining me again, homeboy. See you on the next one.
Absolutely. You know it.
Yeah. The next episodes are going to be on Friday, and we're doing another Severin Dominant one, and that's going to be pretty cool. I think it's going to be the final one of that, but we'll see. There's so much information on them, and I just keep kind of prying over another rock, and all of a sudden you're 4 episodes deep into a series. And then the next episode with Gerald and Nick, we're doing Adeptus Arbites, and that's going to be on next Wednesday. So go check that out. Come check that out, the live streams and all that. Let's shout out Patreon members, because if you don't want to listen to ads, that's where you go. You go to Patreon, and for $2.50, you don't ever have to listen to a fucking ad again. Except for this whole show is technically like an ad for Games Workshop, so I don't know how you reason that one out, but here we are.
Mental gymnastics.
A lot of mental gymnastics, for sure.
Got to be pretty unhinged to follow this program.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Thanks to the new Patreon members of Nathan, Death to Snoochie, and Matt. We do appreciate every dollar that's thrown our way. And, I would never put ads into our episode if even just like 25% of our listeners gave us $1. I would remove all ads from the show and you guys would be ad free. But no, I have to penalize you. And here we are. Go join the Patreon. Thanks for listening. Adios. See you on the next episode.
Okay, thanks. Bye.